Shemoth. These are the names of Israel's sons who came to Egypt with Jacob, each with his family: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. The original number of Jacob's direct descendants, including Joseph, who was in Egypt, was 70. Joseph, his brothers, and everyone else in that generation died. The Israelites were fertile and prolific, and the population increased. They became so numerous that the land was filled with them. A new king who did not know of Joseph came into power over Egypt. He announced to his people, "The Israelites are becoming too numerous and strong for us. We must deal wisely with them, otherwise they may increase so much that if there is war, they will join our enemies and fight against us, driving us from the land." The Egyptians appointed conscription officers over the Israelites to crush their spirits with hard labor. The Israelites were to build up the cities of Pithom and Ramses as supply centers for Pharaoh. But the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more the Israelites proliferated and spread. The Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. The Egyptians started to make the Israelites do labor designated to break their bodies. They made the life of the Israelites miserable with harsh labor involving mortar and bricks, as well as all kinds of work in the field. All the work they made them do was intended to break them. The king of Egypt spoke to the chief Hebrew midwives, whose name were Shiphrah and Puah. He said, "When you deliver Hebrew women, you must look carefully at the birth stool. If the infant is a boy, kill it. But if it is a girl, let it live." The midwives feared God and did not do as the Egyptian king had ordered them. They allowed the infant boys to live. The king of Egypt summoned the midwives and demanded, "Why did you do this? You let the infant boys live." "The Hebrew women are not like the Egyptians," replied the midwives to Pharaoh. "They know how to deliver. They can give birth before a midwife even gets to them." God was good to the midwives, and the people increased and became very numerous. Because the midwives feared God, he gave them great families of their own. Pharaoh then gave orders to all his people, "Every boy who is born must be cast into the Nile, but every girl shall be allowed to live." A man of the house of Levi went and married Levi's daughter. The woman became pregnant and had a son. She realized how extraordinary the child was, and she kept him hidden for 3 months. When she could no longer hide him, she took a papyrus box, coating it with asphalt and pitch, and she placed the child in it. She placed it in the rushes near the bank of the Nile. The child's sister stood herself at a distance to see what would happen to him. Pharaoh's daughter went to bathe in the Nile. While her maids walked along the Nile's edge, she saw the box in the rushes and sent her slave girl to fetch it. Opening the box, she saw the boy. The infant began to cry, and she had pity on it. "It is one of the Hebrew boys," she said. The infant's sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call a Hebrew woman to nurse the child for you?" "Go," replied Pharaoh's daughter. The young girl went and got the child's own mother. "Take this child and nurse it," said Pharaoh's daughter to the mother. "I will pay you a fee." The woman took the child and nursed it. When the child matured, his mother brought him to Pharaoh's daughter. She adopted him as her own son and named him Moshe. "I bore Mashi him from the water," she said. When Moses was grown, he began to go out to his own people, and he saw their hard labor. One day he saw an Egyptian kill one of his fellow Hebrews. Moses looked all around, and when he saw that no one was watching, he killed the Egyptian and hid his body in the sand. Moses went out the next day, and he saw 2 Hebrew men fighting. "Why are you beating your brother?" he demanded of the one who was in the wrong. "Who made you our prince and judge?" Retorted the other. "Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Moses was frightened. "The incident is known," he said. When Pharaoh heard about the affair, he took steps to have Moses put to death. Moses fled from Pharaoh and ended up in the land of Midian. Moses was sitting near the well. The sheikh of Midian had 7 daughters who came to draw water. As they were beginning to fill the troughs and water their father's sheep, other shepherds came and tried to chase them away. Moses got up and came to their aid and then watered their sheep. When they came to their patriarch Reuel, he asked them, "How did you get to come home so early today? An Egyptian stranger rescued us from some shepherds." They replied, "He also drew water for us and watered our sheep." "And where is he now?" he asked his daughters. "Why did you abandon the stranger? Call him and let him have something to eat." Moses decided to live with the man. He gave Moses his daughter Zipporah as a wife. When she gave birth to a son, Moses named him Gershom. "I have been a foreigner, in a strange land," he said. A long time then passed, and the king of Egypt died. The Israelites were still groaning because of their subjugation when they cried out because of their slavery. Their pleas went up before God. God heard their cries, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God saw the Israelites, and he was about to show concern. Moses tended the sheep of his father-in-law Jethro, sheikh of Midian. He led the flock to the edge of the desert, and he came to God's mountain in the Horeb area. God's angel appeared to Moses in the heart of a fire, in the middle of a thorn bush. As he looked, Moses realized that the bush was on fire, but was not being consumed. Moses said to himself, "I must go over there and investigate this wonderful phenomenon. Why does not the bush burn?" When God saw that Moses was going to investigate, he called to him from the middle of the bush. "Moses, Moses," he said. "Yes," replied Moses. "Do not come any closer," said God. "Take your shoes off your feet. The place upon which you are standing is holy ground." God then said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob." Moses hid his face, since he was afraid to look at the divine. God said, "I have indeed seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. I have heard how they cry out because of what their slave drivers do, and I am aware of their pain. I have come down to rescue them from Egypt's power. I will bring them out of that land to a good spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, the territory of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Right now the cry of the Israelites is coming to me. I also see the pressure to which Egypt is subjecting them. Now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh. Bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh?" said Moses to God. "And how can I possibly get the Israelites out of Egypt?" "Because I'll be with you," replied God. "Proof that I have sent you will come when you get the people out of Egypt. All of you will then become God's servants on this mountain." Moses said to God, "So I will go to the Israelites and say, 'Your father's God sent me to you.' They will immediately ask me what his name is. What shall I say to them?" "I will be who I will be," replied God to Moses. God then explained, "This is what you must say to the Israelites. 'I will be sent me to you.'" God then said to Moses, "You must then say to the Israelites, YHWH, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, sent me to you. This is my eternal name, and this is how I am to be recalled for all generations. Go gather the elders of Israel and say to them, YHWH, the God of your fathers appeared to me, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He said, I have granted you special providence regarding what is happening to you in Egypt. I declare that I will bring you out of the wretchedness of Egypt to the land of Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, to a land flowing with milk and honey. They will take what you say seriously. You and the elders of Israel will then go to the king of Egypt. You must tell him, YHWH, God of the Hebrews, revealed himself to us. Now we request that you allow us to take a 3-day journey into the desert to sacrifice to YHWH, our God. I know in advance that the Egyptian king will not allow you to leave unless he is forced to do so. I will then display my power and demolish Egypt through all the miraculous deeds that I will perform in the land. Then Pharaoh will let you leave. I will give the people status among the Egyptians, and when you all finally leave, you will not go empty-handed. Every woman shall borrow articles of silver and gold, as well as clothing from her neighbor or from the woman living with her. You shall load this on your sons and daughters, and you will thus drain Egypt of its wealth. When Moses was able to reply, he said, "But they will not believe me. They will not listen to me. They will say, 'God did not appear to you.' What is that in your hand?" asked God. "A staff." "Throw it on the ground." When Moses threw it on the ground, it turned into a snake, and Moses ran away from it. God said to Moses, "Reach out and grasp its tail." When Moses reached out and grasped the snake, it turned back into a staff in his hand. "This is so that they will believe that God appeared to you," he said, "the God of the fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." God then said to Moses, "Place your hand on your chest inside your robe." When Moses placed his hand in his robe and removed it from his chest, it was leprous, as white as snow. "Place your hand in your robe again," said God. Moses placed his hand back into his robe, and when he removed it from his chest, his skin had returned to normal. "If they do not believe you," said God, "and they do not pay attention to the first miraculous sign, then they will believe the evidence of the second sign. And if they also do not believe these two signs and still do not take you seriously, then you shall take some water from the Nile and spill it on the ground. The water that you will take from the Nile will turn into blood on the ground." Moses pleaded with God, "I beg you, O God, I am not a man of words, not yesterday, not the day before, not from the very first time you spoke to me. I find it difficult to speak and find the right language." "Who gave man a mouth?" replied God. "Who makes a person dumb or deaf? Who gives a person sight or makes him blind? Is it not I, God? Now go, I will be with your mouth and teach you what to say." "I beg you, O Lord," exclaimed Moses, "please send someone more appropriate." God displayed anger toward Moses. "Is not Aaron the Levite your brother?" he said. "I know that he knows how to speak. He is setting out to meet you, and when he sees you, his heart will be glad. You will be able to speak to him and place the words in his mouth. I will then be with your mouth and his mouth, and I will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you. He will be your spokesman, and you will be his guide. Take the staff in your hand. With it, you will perform the miracles." Moses left and returned to his father-in-law Jethro. He said, "I would like to leave and return to my people in Egypt to see if they are still alive." "Go in peace," said Jethro to Moses. While Moses was still in Midian, God said to him, "Go return to Egypt. All the men who seek your life have died." Moses took his wife and sons and, putting them on a donkey, set out to return to Egypt. He also took the divine staff in his hand. God said to Moses, "On your way back to Egypt, keep in mind all the wondrous powers that I have placed in your hand. You will use them before Pharaoh, but I will make him obstinate, and he will not allow the people to leave. You must say to Pharaoh, 'This is what God says, Israel is my son, my firstborn. I have told you to let my son go and serve me. If you refuse to let him leave, I will ultimately kill your own firstborn son.'" When they were in the place where they spent the night along the way, God confronted Moses and wanted to kill him. Zipporah took a stone knife and cut off her son's foreskin, throwing it down at Moses' feet. "As far as I am concerned, you are married to blood," she said to the child. God then spared Moses. "You were married to blood because of circumcision," she said. God said to Aaron, "Go meet Moses in the desert." Aaron went, and when he met Moses near God's mountain, he kissed him. Moses described to Aaron everything that God had told him about his mission, as well as the miraculous proofs that he had instructed him to display. Moses and Aaron went to Egypt, and they gathered all the elders of Israel. Aaron related all the words that God had told Moses, and he demonstrated the miraculous proofs before the people. The people believed. They accepted the message that God had granted special providence to the Israelites, and that he had seen their misery. They bowed their heads and prostrated themselves. Moses and Aaron then went to Pharaoh and said, "This is what YHWH, God of the Hebrews, declares. Let my people leave, so they can sacrifice to me in the desert." Pharaoh replied, "Who is YHWH that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not recognize YHWH, nor will I let Israel leave." "The God of the Hebrews has revealed himself to us," said Moses and Aaron. "Please allow us to take a 3-day journey into the desert, and let us sacrifice to YHWH, our God. Otherwise he may strike us down with the plague or the sword." The Egyptian king said to them, "Moses and Aaron, why are you distracting the people from their work? Get back to your own business." "The peasants are becoming more numerous," said Pharaoh, "and you want them to take a vacation from their work?" That day Pharaoh gave new orders to the people's administrators and foremen. He said, "Do not give the people straw for bricks as before. Let them go and gather their own straw. Meanwhile, you must require them to make the same quota of bricks as before. Do not reduce it. They are lazy and are protesting that they want to go sacrifice to their God. Make the work heavier for the men, and make sure they do it. Then they will stop paying attention to false ideas." The administrators and foremen went out and told the people, "Pharaoh has said that he will no longer give you straw. You must go and get your own straw wherever you can find it. Meanwhile, you may not reduce the amount of work you must complete." The people spread out all over Egypt to gather grain stalks for straw. The administrators pressured them and said, "You must complete your daily work quota just as before when there was straw." The Israelite foremen whom Pharaoh's administrators had appointed were flogged. They were told, "Yesterday and today you did not complete your quotas. Why did not you make as many bricks as before?" The Israelite foremen came and protested to Pharaoh. "Why are you doing this to us?" They said, "We are no longer given straw, but we are told to make bricks. We are the ones being flogged, but it is your people's fault." "You are lazy," retorted Pharaoh. "Lazy? That is why you are saying that you want to sacrifice to God. Now go get to work. You will not be given any straw, but you must deliver your quota of bricks." The Israelite foremen realized that they were in serious trouble. They had been clearly told that they could not reduce their daily brick quota. When they were leaving Pharaoh, the foremen encountered Moses and Aaron waiting to meet them. "Let God look at you and be your judge," they said. "You have destroyed our reputation with Pharaoh and his advisors. You have placed a sword to kill us in their hands." Moses returned to God and said, "O Lord, why do you mistreat your people? Why did you send me? As soon as I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he made things worse for these people. You have done nothing to help your people." God said to Moses, "Now you will begin to see what I will do to Pharaoh. He will be forced to let them go. Not only that, but he will be forced to drive them out of his land." Wa'era. God spoke to Moses and said to him, "I am YHWH. I revealed myself to Abraham, Isaac and Jacob as God Almighty, El Shaddai, and did not allow them to know me by my name YHWH. I also made my covenant with them, promising to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their pilgrimage where they lived as foreigners. I have also heard the groaning of the Israelites whom the Egyptians are holding as slaves, and I have remembered my covenant. Therefore say to the Israelites in my name, I am God. I will take you away from your forced labor in Egypt and free you from their slavery. I will liberate you with a demonstration of my power and with great acts of judgment. I will take you to myself as a nation, and I will be to you as a God. You will know that I am God, your Lord, the one who is bringing you out from under the Egyptian subjugation. I will bring you to the land regarding which I raised my hand, swearing that I would give it to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will give it to you as an inheritance. I am God. Moses related this to the Israelites, but because of their disappointment and hard work, they would no longer listen to him. God spoke to Moses, saying, "Go speak to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he will let the Israelites leave his land." Moses spoke, interrupting the revelation. "Even the Israelites will not listen to me." He said, "How can I expect Pharaoh to listen to me? I have no self-confidence when I speak." God then spoke to both Moses and Aaron. He gave them instructions regarding the Israelites and Pharaoh, king of Egypt, so they would be able to get the Israelites out of Egypt. These are the heads of their extended families. The sons of Israel's firstborn: Reuben, Enoch, Chanok, Palu, Chezron, and Carmi. These are the families of Reuben. The sons of Simeon: Jemuel, Yamin, Ohad, Yachin, and Zochar, as well as Saul, son of the Canaanite woman. These are the families of Simeon. According to the family records, these are the names of Levi's sons: Gershon, Kehath, and Merari. Levi lived to be 137 years old. The families descending from Gershon, Livni, and Shimi. The sons of Kehath: Amram, Yetzer, Hebron, Chevron, and Uziel. Kehath lived to be 133 years old. The sons of Merari: Machli and Mushi. According to the family records, the above are the families of Levi. Amram married his aunt Jochebed, and she bore him Aaron and Moses. Amram lived to be 137 years old. The sons of Yitzhar: Korach, Nepheg, and Zichri. The sons of Aziel: Mishael, Elzaphan, and Sithri. Aaron married Nashon's sister, Elishua, daughter of Aminadab. She bore him Nadav, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. The sons of Korach: Asher, Elkanah, and Abiasaph. These are the families of the Korachites. Aaron's son Eleazar married one of the daughters of Putiel, and she bore him Pinchas. The above are the heads of the Levite clans according to their families. This then is the lineage of Moses and Aaron, to whom God said, "Bring the Israelites out of Egypt and Masseh." They are the ones who spoke to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, in order to get the Israelites out of Egypt. It involved both Moses and Aaron. Still on that day in Egypt, God spoke only to Moses. God spoke to Moses and said, "I am God. Relate to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, all that I am saying to you." Interrupting the revelation, Moses said, "I do not have the self-confidence to speak. How will Pharaoh ever pay attention to me?" God said to Moses, "Observe, I will be making you like a god to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron will be your prophet. You must announce all that I order you to, and your brother Aaron will relate it to Pharaoh. He will then let the Israelites leave his land. I will make Pharaoh obstinate and will thus have the opportunity to display many miraculous signs and wonders in Egypt. This is why Pharaoh will not pay attention to you, but then I will display my power against Egypt, and with great acts of judgment I will bring forth from Egypt my armies, my people, the Israelites. When I display my power and bring the Israelites out from among them, Egypt will know that I am God." Moses and Aaron did this. They did exactly as God had instructed them. When they spoke to Pharaoh, Moses was 80 years old and Aaron was 83 years old. God said to Moses and Aaron, "When Pharaoh speaks to you, he will tell you to prove yourself with a miraculous sign. You, Moses, must then tell Aaron, 'Take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh. Let it become a viper.'" Moses and Aaron came to Pharaoh. They did exactly as God had said. Aaron threw his staff down before Pharaoh, and it became a viper. Pharaoh summoned his scholars and magicians, the master symbolists, were able to do the same thing with their magic tricks. When each one threw down his staff, the staffs all turned into vipers. Aaron's staff then swallowed up their staffs. But Pharaoh remained obstinate and did not pay attention to them, just as God had predicted. God said to Moses, "Pharaoh is obstinate and he refuses to let the people leave. Pay a call on Pharaoh in the morning. When he goes out to the water, stand where you will meet him on the bank of the Nile. Take in your hand the staff that was transformed into a snake. Say to him, 'God, Lord of the Hebrews, has sent me to you with the message. Let my people leave and let them worship me in the desert. So far you have not paid attention.' God now says, 'Through this you will know that I am God. I will strike the water of the Nile with the staff in my hand, and the water will turn into blood. The fish in the Nile will die, and the river will become putrid. The Egyptians will have to stop drinking water from the Nile.' God said to Moses, 'Tell Aaron to take his staff and extend his hand over the waters of Egypt, over their rivers, their canals, their reservoirs, and every place where water is kept, and the water shall turn into blood. There will be blood throughout all Egypt, even in wooden barrels and stone jars.' Moses and Aaron did exactly as God had instructed. Aaron held the staff up and then struck the Nile's water in the presence of Pharaoh and his officials. The Nile's water was transformed into blood. The fish in the Nile died, and the river became so polluted that the Egyptians were no longer able to drink the Nile's water. There was blood everywhere in Egypt. However, when the master symbolists of Egypt were able to produce the same effect with their hidden arts, Pharaoh became obstinate. He would not pay attention to Moses and Aaron, just as God had predicted. Pharaoh turned his back to them and went to his palace. Even to this miracle he would not pay attention. The Egyptians dug around the Nile for drinking water, since they could not drink any water from the river. After God struck the Nile, it remained that way for 7 full days. God said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him in my name, 'Let my people leave so they can serve me.' If you refuse to let them leave, I will strike all your territories with frogs. The Nile will swarm with frogs, and when they emerge, they will be in your palace, in your bedroom, and even in your bed. They will also be in the homes of your officials and people, even in your ovens and kneading bowls. When the frogs emerge, they will be all over you, your people, and your officials." God said to Moses, "Tell Aaron to point the staff in his hand at the rivers, canals, and reservoirs, and he will make frogs emerge upon Egypt." Aaron held his hand out over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs emerged, covering Egypt. The master symbolists were able to produce the same effect with the hidden arts, making frogs emerge on Egyptian land. Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Pray to God, let him get the frogs away from me and my people. I will let the people leave and sacrifice to God. Try and test me," replied Moses. "Exactly when shall I pray for you, your officials and your people? The frogs will immediately depart from you and your homes, remaining only in the Nile." "Tomorrow," said Pharaoh. "As you say," replied Moses. "You will then know that there is none like God our Lord. The frogs will depart from you, as well as from your houses, your officials, and your people. They will remain only in the Nile." Moses and Aaron left Pharaoh, and Moses cried out to God concerning the frogs that he had brought upon Pharaoh. God did just as Moses said, and the frogs in the houses, courtyards, and fields died. The Egyptians gathered them into great heaps, and the land stank. When Pharaoh saw that there had been a respite, he hardened his heart and would not listen to them, just as God had predicted. God said to Moses, "Tell Aaron to hold out his staff and strike the dust of the earth. It will turn into lice all over Egypt." They did this. Aaron held out his hand with his staff and struck the dust of the earth. The lice appeared, attacking man and beast. Throughout all Egypt the dust had turned into lice. The master symbolists tried to produce lice with the hidden arts, but they could not. Meanwhile, the lice were attacking man and beast alike. "It is the finger of God," said the master symbolist to Pharaoh. But Pharaoh remained obstinate and would not listen, just as God had predicted. God said to Moses, "Get up early in the morning and confront Pharaoh when he goes out to the water. Say to him in my name, 'Let my people leave and serve me.' If you do not let my people leave, I will send swarms of harmful creatures to attack you, your officials, your people, and your homes. The houses of Egypt, and even the ground upon which they stand, will be filled with these creatures. On that day I will miraculously set apart the Goshen area where my people remain, so that there will not be any harmful creatures there. You will then realize that I am God right here on earth. I will therefore make a distinction between my people and your people. This miraculous sign will take place tomorrow." God did this, and huge throngs of creatures attacked the palaces of Pharaoh and his officials. Throughout all Egypt, the land was devastated by the creatures. Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron. "Go," he said, "you have permission to sacrifice to your God here in our land." "That would hardly be suitable," replied Moses. "What we will sacrifice to God our Lord is sacred to the Egyptians. Could we sacrifice the sacred animal of the Egyptians before their very eyes and not have them stone us? What we must do is make a 3-day journey into the desert. There we will be able to sacrifice to God our Lord, just as he told us." "I will let you leave," said Pharaoh. "As long as you do not go too far away, you can sacrifice to God your Lord in the desert. But pray for me." Moses answered, "When I leave your presence, I will pray to God. Tomorrow the creatures will go away from Pharaoh, his servants, and his people. But let Pharaoh never again deceive us, refusing to let the people sacrifice to God." Moses left Pharaoh's presence and prayed to God. Doing as Moses requested, God caused the creatures to leave Pharaoh, his servants, and his people. Not a single one remained. But this time again Pharaoh made himself obstinate, and he would not let the people leave. God told Moses to go to Pharaoh, and in the name of God, Lord of the Hebrews, say to him, "Let my people leave and serve me. For if you refuse to let them leave and continue holding them, God's power will be directed against your livestock in the field. The horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, and sheep will die from a very serious epidemic." God will again make a miraculous distinction, this time between Israel's livestock and that of Egypt. Not a single animal belonging to the Israelites will die. God has set a fixed time and has announced that he will strike the land with this tomorrow. On the next day God did this, and all the livestock in Egypt died. Of the Israelites' livestock, however, not a single one was affected. Pharaoh sent word and discovered that among the Israelites' livestock not a single animal had died. But Pharaoh remained obstinate and would not let the people leave. God said to Moses and Aaron, "Take a handful of furnace soot and throw it up in the air before Pharaoh's eyes. It will settle as dust on all Egypt, and when it falls on man or beast anywhere in Egypt, it will cause a rash breaking out into boils." They took the furnace soot and stood before Pharaoh. Moses threw it up in the air, and it caused a rash, which broke into boils in man and beast. The master symbolists could not stand before Moses as a result of the rash, since the rash had attacked the symbolists along with the rest of Egypt. Now it was God who made Pharaoh obstinate. He did not listen to Moses and Aaron, just as God had predicted. God told Moses to get up early in the morning and confront Pharaoh, saying to him in the name of God, Lord of the Hebrews, "Let my people leave and serve me. This time I am prepared to send all my catastrophes against your very heart. They will strike your officials and your people, so that you will know that there is none like me in all the world. I could have unleashed my power, killing you and your people with the epidemic sent against the animals, and you would have been obliterated from the world. The only reason I let you survive was to show you my strength, so that my name will be discussed all over the world. But now you are still lording it over my people, refusing to let them leave. At this time tomorrow I will bring a very heavy hail. Never before in Egypt since the day it was founded has there been anything like it. Now send word and make arrangements to shelter your livestock and everything else you have in the field. Any man or beast who remains in the field and does not come indoors will be pelted by the hail and will die. Some of Pharaoh's subjects feared God's word, and they made their slaves and livestock flee indoors. But those who did not fear God's word left their slaves and livestock in the field. God said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand toward the sky, and there will be hail throughout all Egypt. It will fall on man and beast, and on all outdoor plants all over Egypt." Moses pointed his staff at the sky, and God caused it to thunder and hail, with lightning striking the ground. God then made it hail on the land of Egypt. There was hail with lightning flashing among the hailstones. It was extremely heavy, unlike anything Egypt had experienced since it became a nation. Throughout all Egypt, the hail killed every man and animal who was outdoors. The hail destroyed all the outdoor plants and smashed every tree in the fields. Only in Goshen, where the Israelites lived, there was no hail. Pharaoh sent word and summoned Moses and Aaron. He said to them, "This time I am guilty. God is just. It is I and my people who are in the wrong. Pray to God. There has been enough of this supernatural thunder and hail. I will let you leave. You will not be delayed again." Moses said to him, "When I go out of the city, I will spread my hands in prayer to God. The thunder will then stop, and there will not be any more hail. You will then know that the whole world belongs to God. I realize that you and your subjects still do not fear God. The flax and barley have been destroyed, since the barley was ripe and the flax had formed stalks, but the wheat and spelt have not been destroyed, since they are late in sprouting." Moses left Pharaoh's presence and went out of the city. As soon as he spread his hands out to God, the thunder ceased, and the hail and rain stopped falling to the ground. But when Pharaoh saw that there was no longer any rain, hail or thunder, he continued his sinful ways. He and his officials continued to make themselves obstinate. Pharaoh hardened his heart and did not let the Israelites leave, just as God had predicted through Moses. God said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh. I have made him and his advisors stubborn, so that I will be able to demonstrate these miraculous signs among them. You will then be able to confide to your children and grandchildren how I made fools of the Egyptians, and how I performed miraculous signs among them. You will then fully realize that I am God." Moses and Aaron came to Pharaoh. "In the name of God, Lord of the Hebrews," they said to him, "How long will you refuse to submit to me? Let my people leave and serve me. If you refuse to let my people leave, I will bring locusts to your territories tomorrow. They will cover every visible speck of land, so that you will not be able to see the ground, and they will eat all that was paid for you by the hail, devouring every tree growing in the field. They will fill your palaces, as well as the houses of your officials and of all Egypt. It will be something that your fathers and your fathers' fathers have never seen, since the day they were in the land." With that, Moses turned his back and left Pharaoh. Pharaoh's officials said to him, "How long will this man continue to be a menace to us? Let the men go, and let them serve God their Lord. Don't you yet realize that Egypt is being destroyed?" Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh. "Go, serve God your Lord," he said. "But exactly who will be going?" "Young and old alike will go," replied Moses. "We will go with our sons and our daughters, with our sheep and cattle. It is a festival to God for all of us. May God only be with you, just as I will let you leave with your children, replied Pharaoh. You must realize that you will be confronted by evil. But that's not the way it will be. Let the males go and worship God. If that's really what you want, with that he had them expelled from his presence. God said to Moses, extend your hand over Egypt to bring the locusts, and they will emerge on Egypt. They will eat all the foliage in the land that was paid by the hail. Moses raised his hand over Egypt, and all that day and night God made an east wind blow over the land. When morning came, the east wind was carrying the locusts. The locusts invaded Egypt, settling on all Egyptian territory. It was a very severe plague. Never before had there been such a locust plague, and never again would the like be seen. The locusts covered the entire surface of the land, making the ground black. They ate all the plants on the ground and all the fruit on the trees. Whatever had been sprayed by the hail, nothing green remained on the trees and plants throughout all Egypt. Pharaoh hastily summoned Moses and Aaron. I have committed a crime, he said, both to God your Lord and to you. Now forgive my offense, just this one more time. Pray to God your Lord. Just take this death away from me. Moses left Pharaoh's presence and prayed to God. God turned the wind around, transforming it into a very strong west wind. It carried away the locusts and plunged them into the Red Sea. Not a single locust remained within all Egypt's borders. But once again, God made Pharaoh obstinate, and he would not let the Israelites leave. God said to Moses, reach out toward the sky with your hand, and there will be darkness in Egypt. The darkness will be palpable. Moses lifted his hand toward the sky, and there was an opaque darkness in all Egypt, lasting for 3 days. People could not see each other, and no one left his place for 3 days. The Israelites, however, had light in the areas where they lived. Pharaoh summoned Moses. Go, he said, worship God. Even your children can go with you. Just leave your sheep and cattle behind. Will you then provide us with sacrifices and burnt offerings, so that we will be able to offer them to God our Lord? Replied Moses. Our livestock must also go along with us. Not a single hoof can be left behind. We must take them to serve God our Lord, since we do not know what we will need to worship God until we get there. God made Pharaoh obstinate, and he was no longer willing to let the Israelites leave. Leave my presence, said Pharaoh to Moses. Don't dare see my face again. The day you appear before me, you will die. As you say, replied Moses, I will not see your face again. God said to Moses, there is one more plague that I will send against Pharaoh and Egypt. After that, he will let you leave this place. When he lets you leave, he will actually drive you out of here. Now speak to the people discreetly, and let each man request from his friend gold and silver articles. Let every woman make the same request of her friends. God gave the people status among the Egyptians. Moses was also very highly respected in Egypt, both by Pharaoh's officials and by the people. Moses said to Pharaoh, in God's name, around midnight I will go out in the midst of Egypt. Every firstborn in Egypt will die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh sitting on his throne to the firstborn of the slave girl behind the millstones. Every firstborn animal will also die. There will be a great cry of anguish throughout all Egypt. Never before has there been anything like it, and never again will there be the like. But among the Israelites, a dog will not even whine because of man or beast. You will then realize that God is making a miraculous distinction between Egypt and Israel. All your officials here will come and bow down to me. They will say, leave, you and all your followers. Only then will I leave. He left Pharaoh in great anger. God said to Moses, Pharaoh will not listen to you. This is so that I will be able to do all the more wonders in Egypt. Moses and Aaron had done all these wonders before Pharaoh. Still, because God had made Pharaoh obstinate, he would not let the Israelites leave his land. God said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, this month shall be the head month to you. It shall be the first month of the year. Speak to the entire community of Israel, saying, on the 10th of this month, every man must take a lamb for each extended family, a lamb for each household. If the household is too small for a lamb, then he and a close neighbor can obtain a lamb together, as long as it is for specifically designated individuals. Individuals shall be designated for a lamb according to how much each one will eat. You must have a flawless young animal, a 1-year-old male. You can take it from the sheep or from the goats. Hold it in safekeeping until the 14th day of this month. The entire community of Israel shall then slaughter their sacrifices in the afternoon. They must take the blood and place it on the 2 doorposts and on the beam above the door of the houses in which they will eat the sacrifice. Eat the sacrificial meat during the night, roasted over fire. Eat it with matzah and bitter herbs. Do not eat it raw or cooked in water, but only roasted over fire, including its head, its legs, and its internal organs. Do not leave any of it over until morning. Anything that is left over until morning must be burned in fire. You must eat it with your waist belted, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you must eat it in haste. It is the Passover Pesach offering to God. I will pass through Egypt on that night, and I will kill every firstborn in Egypt, man and beast. I will perform acts of judgment against all the gods of Egypt. I alone am God. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are staying. I will see the blood and pass you by Pesach. There will not be any deadly plague among you when I strike Egypt. This day must be one that you will remember. You must keep it as a festival to God for all generations. It is a law for all time that you must celebrate it. Eat matzahs for 7 days. By the first day, you must have your homes cleared of all leaven. Whoever eats leaven from the first day until the 7th day will have his soul cut off from Israel. The first day shall be a sacred holiday, and the 7th day shall also be a sacred holiday. No work may be done on these days. The only work that you may do is that which is needed, so that everyone will be able to eat. Be careful regarding the matzahs, for on this very day I will have brought your masses out of Egypt. You must carefully keep this day for all generations. It is a law for all times. From the 14th day of the first month in the evening until the night of the 21st day of the month, you must eat only matzahs. During these 7 days, no leaven may be found in your homes. If someone eats anything leavened, his soul shall be cut off from the community of Israel. This is true, whether he is a proselyte or a person born into the nation. You must not eat anything leavened in all the areas where you live. Eat matzahs. Moses summoned the elders of Israel and said to them, "Gather the people and get yourselves sheep for your families, so that you will be able to slaughter the Passover sacrifice. You will then have to take a bunch of hyssop and dip it into the blood that will be placed in a basin. Touch the beam over the door and the 2 doorposts with some of the blood in the basin. Not a single one of you may go out the door of his house until morning." God will then pass through to strike Egypt. When he sees the blood over the door and on the 2 doorposts, God will pass over that door and not let the force of destruction enter your houses to strike. You must keep this ritual as a law for you and your children forever. When you come to the land that God will give you, as he promised, you must also keep this service. Your children may then ask you, "What is this service to you?" You must answer, "It is the Passover service to God." He passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt when he struck the Egyptians, sparing our homes. The people bent their heads and prostrated themselves. The Israelites went and did as God had instructed Moses and Aaron. They did it exactly. It was midnight. God killed every firstborn in Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh sitting on his throne to the firstborn of the prisoner in the dungeon, as well as every firstborn animal. Pharaoh stayed up that night, along with all his officials and all the rest of Egypt. There was a great outcry, since there was no house where there were no dead. Pharaoh sent for Moses and Aaron during the night. "Get moving," he said. "Get out from among my people, you and the Israelites. Go worship God just as you demanded. Take your sheep and cattle, just as you said. Go, bless me too." The Egyptians were also urging the people to hurry and leave the land. "We are all dead men," they were saying. The people took their dough before it could rise. The leftover dough was wrapped in their robes and placed on their shoulders. The Israelites also did as Moses had said. They requested silver and gold articles and clothing from the Egyptians. God made the Egyptians respect the people, and they granted their request. The Israelites thus drained Egypt of its wealth. The Israelites traveled from Ramesses toward Succoth. There were about 600,000 adult males on foot, besides the children. A great mixture of nationalities left with them. There were also sheep and cattle, a huge amount of livestock. The Israelites baked the dough that they had brought out of Egypt into unleavened matzah cakes. Since it had not risen, they had been driven out of Egypt and could not delay, and they had not prepared any other provisions. The lifestyle that the Israelites endured in Egypt had thus lasted 430 years. At the end of the 430 years, all of God's armies left Egypt in broad daylight. There was a night of vigil for God, preparing to bring them out of Egypt. This night remains for the Israelites a vigil to God for all generations. God said to Moses and Aaron, "This is the law of the Passover sacrifice. No outsider may eat it. If a man buys a slave for cash and circumcises him, then the slave can eat it. But if a Gentile is a temporary resident of a hired hand, he may not eat the Passover sacrifice. It must be eaten by a single group. Do not bring any of its meat out of the group. Do not break any of its bones. The entire community of Israel must keep this ritual. When a proselyte joins you and wants to offer the Passover sacrifice to God, every male in his household must be circumcised. He may then join in the observance and be like a native-born Israelite, but no uncircumcised man may eat the sacrifice. The same law shall apply both for the native-born Israelite and for the proselyte who joins you." All the Israelites did as God had instructed Moses and Aaron. They did it exactly. On that very day, God took the Israelites out of Egypt in organized groups. God spoke to Moses, saying, "Sanctify to me every firstborn that initiates the womb among the Israelites, among both man and beast. It is mine." Moses said to the people, "Remember this day as the time you left Egypt, the place of slavery, when God brought you out of here with a show of force. No leaven may be eaten. You left this day, in the month of standing grain. There will come a time when God will bring you to the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Eat matzahs for 7 days, and make the 7th day a festival to God. Since matzahs must be eaten for these 7 days, no leaven may be seen in your possession, no leaven may be seen in all your territories. On that day you must tell your child, 'It is because of this that God acted for me when I left Egypt.' These words must also be a sign on your arm and a reminder in the center of your head. God's Torah will then be on your tongue. It was with a show of strength that God brought you out of Egypt. This law must therefore be kept at its designated time from year to year. There will come a time when God will have brought you to the land of the Canaanites, which He promised you and your ancestors, and He will have given it to you. You will then bring to God every firstborn that initiates the womb. Whenever you have a young firstling animal, the males belong to God. Every firstling donkey must be redeemed with a sheep. If it is not redeemed, you must decapitate it. You must also redeem every firstborn among your sons. Your child may later ask you, 'What is this?' You must answer him, 'With a show of power, God brought us out of Egypt, the place of slavery.' When Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us leave, God killed all the firstborn in Egypt. man and beast alike. I therefore sacrifice to God all male firstling animals and redeem all the firstborn of my sons. These words shall also be a sign on your arm and an insignia in the center of your head. All this is because God brought us out of Egypt with a show of strength. Beshalak. When Pharaoh let the people leave, God did not lead them along the Philistine highway, although it was the shorter route. God's consideration was that if the people encountered armed resistance, they would lose heart and return to Egypt. God therefore made the people take a roundabout path by way of the desert to the Red Sea. The Israelites were well prepared when they left Egypt. Moses took Joseph's remains with him. Joseph had bound the Israelites by an oath. God will grant you special providence, and you must then bring my remains out of here with you. The Israelites moved on from Sukkot, and they camped in Etham, at the edge of the desert. God went before them by day with a pillar of cloud to guide them along the way. By night it appeared as a pillar of fire, providing them with light. They could thus travel day and night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire at night never left their position in front of the people. God spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them to turn back and camp before Freedom Valley, between Tower and the sea, facing Lord of the North. Camp opposite it, near the sea. Pharaoh will then say that the Israelites are lost in the area and trapped in the desert. I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will come after them. I will triumph over Pharaoh and his entire army, and Egypt will know that I am God." The Israelites did as they had been instructed. Meanwhile, the king of Egypt received the news that the people were escaping. Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds regarding the people and said, "What have we done? How could we have released Israel from doing our work?" Pharaoh harnessed his chariot and summoned his people to go with him. He took 600 chariots with chosen crews, as well as the entire chariot corps of Egypt, with supporting infantry for them all. God hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he went after the Israelites. Meanwhile, the Israelites were living in triumph. Setting out after the Israelites, the Egyptians overtook them while they were camping by the sea at Freedom Valley, opposite Lord of the North. All of Pharaoh's chariot, horses, cavalry, and infantry were there. As Pharaoh came close, the Israelites looked up. They saw the Egyptians marching at their rear, and the people became very frightened. The Israelites cried out to God. They said to Moses, "Were not there enough graves in Egypt? Why did you have to bring us out here to die in the desert? How could you do such a thing to us, bringing us out of Egypt? Did not we tell you in Egypt to leave us alone and let us work for the Egyptians? It would have been better to be slaves in Egypt than to die here in the desert." "Don't be afraid," replied Moses to the people. "Stand firm and you will see what God will do to rescue you today. You might be seeing the Egyptians today, but you will never see them again. God will fight for you, but you must remain silent." God said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Speak to the Israelites and let them start moving. Raise your staff and extend your hand over the sea. You will split the sea, and the Israelites will be able to cross over on dry land. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they will follow you. Thus I will triumph over Pharaoh and his entire army, his chariot corps and his cavalry. When I have this triumph over Pharaoh, his chariot corps and cavalry, Egypt will know that I am God." God's angel had been traveling in front of the Israelite camp, but now it moved and went behind them. The pillar of cloud thus moved from in front of them and stood at their rear. It came between the Egyptian and the Israelite camps. There was cloud and darkness that night, blocking out all visibility. Moses extended his hand over the sea. During the entire night, God drove back the sea with a powerful east wind, transforming the seabed into dry land. The waters were divided. The Israelites entered the seabed on dry land. The water was on their right and left like two walls. The Egyptians gave chase and came after the Israelites. All of Pharaoh's horses, chariot corps, and cavalry went into the middle of the sea. Toward the end of the night, God struck at the Egyptian army with a pillar of fire and cloud. He panicked the Egyptian army. The chariot wheels became bogged down, and they could move only with great difficulty. The Egyptians cried out, "Let us flee from Israel. God is fighting for them against Egypt." God said to Moses, "Extend your hand over the sea. The waters will come back over the Egyptians, covering their chariot, calves, and cavalry." Just before morning, Moses extended his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal condition. The Egyptians were fleeing the water, but God swamped the Egyptians in the middle of the sea. The waters came back and covered the cavalry and chariots. Of all Pharaoh's army that had followed the Israelites into the sea, not a single one remained. Meanwhile, the Israelites were walking in the midst of the sea on dry land. The water was on their right and on their left like two walls. Thus on that day God rescued the Israelites from Egypt. The Israelites saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. The Israelites saw the great power that God had unleashed against Egypt, and the people were in awe of God. They believed in God and in his servant Moses. Moses and the Israelites then sang this song to God. It went, "I will sing to God for his great victory. Horse and rider he threw in the sea. My strength and song is God, and this is my deliverance. This is my God, I will enshrine him. My father's God, I will exalt him. God is the master of war. God is his name." Pharaoh's chariots and army he cast in the sea. His very best officers were drowned in the Red Sea. The depths covered them. They sank to the bottom like a stone. Your right hand, O God, is awesome in power. Your right hand, O God, crushes the foe. In your great majesty, you broke your opponents. You sent forth your wrath. It devoured them like straw. At the blast of your nostrils, the waters towered. Flowing water stood like a wall. The depths congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy said, "I will give chase, I will overtake, divide the spoils, I will satisfy myself, I will draw my sword, my hand will demolish them." You made your wind blow, the sea covered them. They sang like lead in the mighty waters. Who is like you among powers? God. Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in praise, doing wonders? You put forth your right hand, the earth swallowed them. With love you led the people you redeemed. With might you led them to your holy shrine. Nations heard and shuddered. Terror gripped those who dwell in Philistia. Edom's chiefs then panicked. Moab's heroes were seized with trembling. Canaan's residents melted away. Fear and dread fell upon them at the greatness of your arm. They are still as stone until your people crossed, O God, until the people you gained crossed over. O bring them and plant them on the mount you possess. The place you dwell in is your accomplishment, God, the shrine of God. Your hands have founded. God will reign forever and ever. This song was sung when Pharaoh's horse came into the sea, along with his chariot, calves, and cavalry, and God made the sea come back on them. The Israelites had walked on dry land in the midst of the sea. Miriam, the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took the drum in her hand, and all the women followed her with drums and dancing. Miriam led them in the response, "Sing to God for his great victory. Horse and rider he cast in the sea." Moses led the Israelites away from the Red Sea, and they went out into the Shur desert. They traveled for 3 days in the desert without finding any water. Finally they came to Marah, but they could not drink any water there. The water was bitter, Marah, and that was why the place was called Marah. The people complained to Moses. "What shall we drink?" they demanded. When Moses cried out to God, he showed him a certain tree. Moses threw it into the water, and the water became drinkable. It was there that God taught them survival techniques and methods, and there he tested them. He said, "If you obey God your Lord and do what is upright in his eyes, carefully heeding all his commandments and keeping all his decrees, then I will not strike you with any of the sicknesses that I brought on Egypt. I am God who heals you." Then they came to Elim. Here there were 12 springs of water and 70 date palms. They then camped by the water. They moved on from Elim, and the entire community of Israel came to the Sin desert between Elim and Sinai. It was the 15th of the second month after they had left Egypt. There in the desert, the entire Israelite community began to complain against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by God's hand in Egypt, there at least we could sit by pots of meat and eat our fill of bread. But you had to bring us out to this desert to kill the entire community by starvation." God said to Moses, "I will make bread rain down to you from the sky. The people will go out and gather enough for each day. I will test them to see whether or not they will keep my law. On Friday they will have to prepare what they bring home. It will be twice as much as they gather every other day." Moses and Aaron said to the Israelites, "When evening comes, you will know that it was God who took you out of Egypt, and in the morning you will see God's glory. He has heard your complaints, which are against God. After all, what are we that you should complain against us?" Moses said, "In the evening God will give you meat to eat, and in the morning there will be enough bread to fill you up. God has heard your complaints, which you are actually addressing against him. What are we? Your complaints are not against us, but against God." Moses said to Aaron, "Tell the entire Israelite community to gather before God, for he has heard your complaints." When Aaron spoke to the entire Israelite community, they turned toward the desert. God's glory was visible in the clouds. God spoke to Moses, saying, "I have heard the complaints of the Israelites. Speak to them and say, 'In the afternoon you will eat meat, and in the morning you will have your fill of bread. You will then know that I am God your Lord.'" That evening a flock of quail came and covered the camp. Then in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the layer of dew evaporated, there were little grains all over the surface of the desert. It looked like fine frost on the ground. The Israelites looked at it and had no idea what it was. "What is it?" they asked one another. God's instructions are that each man shall take as much as he needs. There shall be an omer for each person, according to the number of people each man has in his tent. When the Israelites went to do this, some gathered more and some less. But when they measured it with an omer, the one who had taken more did not have any extra, and the one who had taken less did not have too little. They had gathered exactly enough for each one to eat. Moses announced to them, "Let no man leave any over until morning." Some men did not listen to Moses and left a portion over for the morning. It became putrid and maggoty with worms. Moses was angry with these people. The people gathered it each morning, according to what each person would eat. Then when the sun became hot, it melted. When Friday came, what they gathered turned out to be a double portion of food, 2 omers for each person. All the leaders of the community came and reported it to Moses. Moses said to them, "This is what God has said. Tomorrow is a day of rest, God's holy Sabbath. Bake what you want to bake, and cook what you want to cook today. Whatever you have left over, put aside carefully until morning." They put it away until Saturday morning. As Moses had instructed, it was not putrid, and there were no maggots in it. Moses announced, "Eat it today, for today is God's Sabbath. You will not find anything in the field today. You are to gather this food during the 6 weekdays, but the 7th day is a Sabbath, and on that day there will not be any." Still some people went out to gather food on Saturday, but they found nothing. God told Moses to say to the Israelites, "How long will you refuse to keep my commandments and my law? You must realize that God has given you the Sabbath, and that is why I gave you food for 2 days on Friday. On the Sabbath, every person must remain in his designated place. One may not leave his home to gather food on Saturday." The people rested on Saturday. The family of Israel called the food manna. It looked like coriander seed, except that it was white. It tasted like a honey donut. Moses said, "This is what God has commanded. Fill an omer measure with the manna as a keepsake for your descendants. They will then see the food that I fed you in the desert when I brought you out of Egypt." Moses said to Aaron, "Take an urn and fill it with an omer of manna. Place it before God as a keepsake for your descendants." As God commanded Moses, Aaron later placed it before the ark of testimony as a keepsake. The Israelites were to eat the manna for 40 years, until they came to inhabited territory. They ate the manna until they came to the edge of the land of Canaan. An omer is a tenth of an ephah. The entire Israelite community moved on from the Sin desert, traveling according to God's instructions, until they camped in Rephidim. There was no water for the people to drink. The people began to quarrel with Moses. "Give us water to drink," they exclaimed. "Why are you quarreling with me?" asked Moses. "Are you trying to test God?" The people began to suffer thirst because of the lack of water, and they began demonstrating against Moses. "Why did you bring us out of Egypt?" demanded the leader. "Do you want to make me, my children, and my livestock die of thirst?" Moses cried out to God. "What shall I do for this people?" He said, "Before long they will stone me." God said to Moses, "March in front of the people, along with the elders of Israel. Take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb. You must strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink." Moses did this in the presence of the elders of Israel. Moses named the place Testing and Argument, because the people had argued and had tested God. They had asked, "Is God with us or not?" Amalek arrived and attacked Israel there in Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose men for us and prepare for battle against Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." Joshua did as Moses had told him. Engaging Amalek in battle, Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held his hands up, Israel would be winning. But as soon as he let his hands down, the battle would go in Amalek's favor. When Moses' hands became weary, they took a stone and placed it under him, so that he would be able to sit on it. Aaron and Hur then held his hands, one on each side, and his hands remained steady until sunset. Joshua was thus able to break the ranks of Amalek and his allies with the sword. God said to Moses, "Write this as a reminder in the book and repeat it carefully to Joshua. I will totally obliterate the memory of Amalek from under the heavens." Moses built an altar, and he named it "God is my banner." He said, "The hand is on God's throne. God shall be at war with Amalek for all generations." Jethro. Moses' father-in-law Jethro, Sheikh of Midian, heard about all that God had done for Moses and his people Israel when he brought Israel out of Egypt. Jethro brought along Moses' wife Zipporah, who had been sent home earlier, and had 2 sons. The name of the first one was Gershom, because Moses had declared, I was a foreigner, in a strange land. The name of the other one was Eliezer, because my father's god El was my helper. Ezer, rescuing me from Pharaoh's word. Jethro came together with Moses' wife and sons to the desert, where Moses was staying near God's mountain. He sent word to Moses, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am on my way to you, along with your wife. Her 2 sons are with her. Moses went out to greet his father-in-law, bowing down low and kissing him. They asked about each other's welfare and went into the tent. Moses told his father-in-law about all that God had done to Pharaoh and Egypt for the sake of Israel, as well as all the frustrations they had encountered on the way and how God had rescued them. Jethro expressed joy because of all the good that God had done for Israel, rescuing them from Egypt's power. He said, Praise be God, who rescued you from the power of Egypt and Pharaoh, who liberated the people from Egypt's power. Now I know that God is the greatest of all deities. Through their very plots, he rose above them. Jethro brought burnt offerings and other sacrifices to God. Aaron and all the elders of Israel came to share the meal with Moses' father-in-law before God. The next day Moses sat to judge the people. They stood around Moses from morning to evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, What are you doing to the people? Why are you sitting by yourself and letting all the people stand around you from morning until evening? The people come to me to seek God, replied Moses to his father-in-law. Whenever they have a problem, they come to me. I judge between man and his neighbor, and I teach God's decrees and laws. Moses' father-in-law said to him, What you are doing is not good. You are going to wear yourself out, along with this nation that is with you. Your responsibility is too great. You cannot do it all alone. Now listen to me. I will give you advice, and God will be with you. You must be God's representative for the people and bring their concerns to God. Clarify the decrees and laws for the people. Show them the path they must take and the things they must do. But you must also seek out from among all the people capable, God-fearing men of truth, who hate injustice. You must then appoint them over the people as leaders of thousands, leaders of hundreds, leaders of 50s, and leaders of 10s. Let them administer justice for the people on a regular basis. Of course, they will have to bring every major case to you, but they can judge the minor cases by themselves. They will then share the burden, making things easier for you. If you agree to this and God concurs, you will be able to survive. This entire nation will then also be able to attain its goal of peace. Moses took his father-in-law's advice and did all that he said. He chose capable men from all Israel, and he appointed them as administrators over the people, leaders of thousands, leaders of hundreds, leaders of 50s, and leaders of 10s. They administered justice on a regular basis, bringing the difficult cases to Moses and judging the simple cases by themselves. Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went away to his homeland. In the 3rd month after the Israelites left Egypt, on the 1st of the month they came to the desert of Sinai. They had departed from Rephidim and had arrived in the Sinai desert. Camping in the wilderness, Israel camped opposite the mountain. Moses went up to God. God called to him from the mountain and said, This is what you must say to the family of Jacob and tell the Israelites, You saw what I did in Egypt, carrying you on eagle's wings and bringing you to me. Now if you obey me and keep my covenant, you shall be my special treasure among all nations, even though all the world is mine. You will be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation to me. These are the words that you must relate to the Israelites. Moses came back and summoned the elders of the people, conveying to them all that God had said. All the people answered as one and said, All that God has spoken, we will do. Moses brought the people's reply back to God. God said to Moses, I will come to you in a thick cloud so that all the people will hear when I speak to you. They will then believe in you forever. Moses told God the people's response to that. God said to Moses, Go to the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow. Let them even immerse their clothing. They will then be ready for the third day. For on the third day God will descend on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. Set a boundary for the people around the mountain and tell them to be careful not to climb the mountain or even to touch its edge. Anyone touching the mountain will be put to death. You will not have to lay a hand on him, for he will be stoned or cast down. Neither man nor beast will be allowed to live. But when the trumpet is sounded with a long blast, they will then be allowed to climb the mountain. Moses went down from the mountain to the people. He sanctified them, and they immersed themselves and their clothing. Moses said to the people, "Keep yourselves in readiness for 3 days. Do not come near a woman." The third day arrived. There was thunder and lightning in the morning, with a heavy cloud on the mountain, and an extremely loud blast of a ram's horn. The people in the camp trembled. Moses led the people out of the camp toward the divine presence. They stood transfixed at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was all in smoke because of the presence that had come down on it. God was in the fire, and its smoke went up like the smoke of a lime kiln. The entire mountain trembled violently. There was the sound of a ram's horn increasing in volume to a great degree. Moses spoke, and God replied with a voice. God came down on Mount Sinai to the peak of the mountain. He summoned Moses to the mountain peak, and Moses climbed up. God said to Moses, "Go back down and warn the people that they must not cross the boundary in order to see the divine, because this will cause many to die. The priests who usually come near the divine must also sanctify themselves, or else God will send destruction among them." Moses replied to God, "The people cannot climb Mount Sinai. You already warned them to set a boundary around the mountain and to declare it sacred." God said to him, "Go down, you can then come back up along with Aaron. But the priests and the other people must not violate the boundary to go up to the divine. If they do, he will send destruction among them." Moses went down to the people and conveyed this to them. God spoke all these words, saying, "I am God, your Lord, who brought you out of Egypt, from the place of slavery. Do not have any other gods before me. Do not represent such gods by any carved statue or picture of anything in the heaven above, on the earth below, or in the water below the land. Do not bow down to such gods or worship them. I am God your Lord, a God who demands exclusive worship. Where my enemies are concerned, I keep in mind the sin of the fathers for their descendants, to the third and fourth generation. But for those who love me and keep my commandments, I show love for thousands of generations. Do not take the name of God your Lord in vain. God will not allow the one who takes his name in vain to go unpunished. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. You can work during the 6 weekdays and do all your tasks. But Saturday is the Sabbath to God your Lord. Do not do anything that constitutes work. This includes you, your son, your daughter, your slave, your maid, your animal, and the foreigner in your gates. It was during the 6 weekdays that God made the heaven, the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on Saturday. God therefore blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and mother. You will then live long on the land that God your Lord is giving you. Do not commit murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not testify as a false witness against your neighbor. Do not be envious of your neighbor's house. Do not be envious of your neighbor's wife, his slave, his maid, his ox, his donkey, or anything else that is your neighbor's. All the people saw the sounds, the flames, the blast of the ram's horn, and the mountain smoking. The people trembled when they saw it, keeping their distance. They said to Moses, "You speak to us, and we will listen, but let God not speak with us any more, for we will die if he does." "Do not be afraid," replied Moses to the people. "God only came to raise you up. His fear will then be on your faces, and you will not sin." The people kept their distance while Moses entered the midst where the divine was revealed. God said to Moses, "This is what you must tell the Israelites. You have seen that I spoke to you from heaven. Do not make a representation of anything that is with me. Do not make silver or gold gods for yourselves. Make an earthen altar for me. You can sacrifice your burnt offerings, your peace offerings, your sheep and your cattle on it. Wherever I allow my name to be mentioned, I will come to you and bless you. When you eventually build a stone altar for me, do not build it out of cut stone. Your sword will have been lifted against it. You will have profaned it. Do not climb up to my altar with steps, so that your nakedness not be revealed." Mishparim. These are the laws that you must set before the Israelites. If you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve for 6 years, but in the 7th year he is to be set free without liability. If he was unmarried when he entered service, he shall leave by himself. But if he was a married man, his wife shall leave with him. If his master gives him a wife and she bears sons or daughters, the woman and her children shall remain her master's property. The slave shall leave by himself. If the slave declares, "I am fond of my master, my wife and my children, I do not want to go free," his master must bring him to the courts, standing the slave next to the door or doorpost. His master shall pierce his ear with an awl. The slave shall then serve his master forever. If a man sells his daughter as a maidservant, she shall not be freed as male servants are released. Her master should provisionally designate her as his bride, and if she is not pleasing to him, he must let her be redeemed. He is considered to have broken faith with her, and he therefore does not have the right to sell her to anyone else. If the master designates her as a bride for his son, she must be treated exactly the same as any other girl. Similarly, if the master marries another wife, he may not diminish this one's allowance, clothing, or conjugal rights. If none of the above 3 are done to the girl, then she shall be released without liability or payment. If one person strikes another and the victim dies, the murderer must be put to death. If he did not plan to kill his victim, but God caused it to happen, then I will provide a place where the killer can find refuge. If a person plots against his neighbor to kill him intentionally, then you must even take him from my altar to put him to death. Whoever intentionally injures his father or mother shall be put to death. If one person kidnaps and sells another, and the victim is seen in his hand, then the kidnapper shall be put to death. Whoever curses his father or mother shall be put to death. This is the law when 2 men fight, and one hits the other with a stone or with his fist. If the victim does not die but becomes bedridden, and then gets up and can walk under his own power, the one who struck him shall be acquitted. Still he must pay for the victim's loss of work, and must provide for his complete cure. If a man strikes his male or female slave with a rod, and the slave dies under his hand, the death must be avenged. However, if the slave survives for a day or 2, then since he is his master's property, his death shall not be avenged. This is the law when 2 men fight and accidentally harm a pregnant woman, causing her to miscarry. If there is no fatal injury to the woman, then the guilty party must pay a monetary penalty. The woman's husband must sue for it, and the amount is then determined by the courts. However, if there is a fatal injury to the woman, then he must pay full compensation for her life. Full compensation must be paid for the loss of an eye, a tooth, a hand, or a foot. Full compensation must also be paid for a burn, a wound, or a bruise. If a person strikes his male or female slave in the eye and blinds it, he shall set the slave free in compensation for his eye. Similarly, if he knocks out the tooth of his male or female slave, he must set the slave free in compensation for his tooth. If an ox gores a man or woman and the victim dies, the ox must be stoned to death, and its flesh may not be eaten. The owner of the ox, however, shall not be punished. But if the ox was in the habit of goring on previous occasions, and the owner was warned but did not take precautions, then if it kills a man or woman, the ox must be stoned, and its owner shall also deserve to die. Nevertheless, an atonement fine must be imposed on him, and he must pay whatever is imposed on him as a redemption for his life. This law also applies if the ox gores a minor boy or a minor girl. If the ox gores a male or female slave, its owner must give 30 silver shekels to the slave's master, and the bull must be stoned. This is the law if a person digs a hole in the ground or uncovers a hole and does not cover it over if an ox or donkey falls into it. The one responsible for the hole must make restitution, restoring the full value of the animal to its owner. The dead animal remains the property of its owner. If one person's ox injures the ox of another person and it dies, they shall sell the live ox and divide the money received for it. They shall also divide the dead animal. However, if the ox was known to be in the habit of goring on previous occasions and its owner did not take precautions, then he must pay the full value of the dead ox. The dead animal remains the property of its owner. If a person steals an ox or sheep and then slaughters or sells it, he must repay 5 oxen for each ox and 4 sheep for each sheep. If a burglar is caught in the act of breaking in and is struck and killed, it is not considered an act of murder. However, if he robs in broad daylight, then it is an act of murder to kill him. A thief must make full restitution. If he does not have the means, he must be sold as a slave to make restitution for his theft. If the stolen article is found in his possession and it is a living ox, donkey or sheep, he must make double restitution. If a person grazes a field or a vineyard and lets his livestock loose so that it grazes in another person's field, he must make restitution with the best of his field and the best of his vineyard. If fire gets out of control and spreads through weeds and then consumes bound or standing grain or a field, the one who started the fire must make restitution. If one person gives another money or articles to watch and they are stolen from the house of the person keeping them, then if the thief is found, the thief must make the usual double restitution. If the thief is not found, the owner of the house shall be brought to the courts where he must swear that he did not lay a hand on his neighbor's property. In every case of dishonesty, whether it involves an ox, a donkey, a sheep, a garment, or anything else that was allegedly lost and witnesses testify that it was seen, both parties' claims must be brought to the courts. The person whom the courts declare guilty must then make double restitution to the other. If one person gives another a donkey, an ox, a sheep, or any other animal to watch and it dies, is maimed, or is carried off in a raid without eyewitnesses, then the case between the two must be decided on the basis of an oath to God. If the person keeping the animal did not make use of the other's property, the owner must accept it, and the person keeping the animal need not pay. However, if it was stolen from the keeper, then he must make restitution to the animal's owner. If the animal was killed by a wild beast and the keeper can provide evidence, he need not make restitution for the attacked animal. If a person borrows something from another and it becomes broken or dies and the owner is not involved with the borrower, then the borrower must make full restitution. However, if the owner was involved with him, then the borrower need not make restitution. If the article was hired, the loss is covered by the rental price. If a man seduces a virgin who is not betrothed, he must pay a dowry and must marry her. If a father refuses to allow him to marry her, then he must pay the father the usual dowry money for virgins. Do not allow a sorceress to live. Whoever lies with an animal must be put to death. Whoever sacrifices to any deity other than God alone must be condemned to death. Do not hurt the feelings of a foreigner or oppress him, for you were foreigners in Egypt. Do not mistreat a widow or an orphan. If you mistreat them and then cry out to me, I will hear they cry. I will then display my anger and kill you by the sword, so that your wives will be widows and your children orphans. When you lend money to my people, to the poor man among you, do not press him for repayment. Also, do not take interest from him. If you take your neighbor's garment as security for a loan, you must return it to him before sunset. This alone is his covering, the garment for his skin, with what shall he sleep? Therefore, if he cries out to me, I will listen, for I am compassionate. Do not curse the judges, do not curse a leader of your people. Do not delay your offerings of newly ripened produce and your agricultural offerings. Give me the firstborn of your sons. You must also do likewise with your ox and sheep. It must remain with its mother for 7 days, but on the 8th day you must give it to me. Be holy people to me. Do not eat flesh torn off in the field by a predator. Cast it to the dogs. Do not accept a false report. Do not join forces with a wicked person to be a corrupt witness. Do not follow the majority to do evil. Do not speak up in a trial to pervert justice. A case must be decided on the basis of the majority. Do not favor even the poorest man in his lawsuit. If you come across your enemy's ox or donkey going astray, bring it back to him. If you see the donkey of someone you hate lying under its load, you might want to refrain from helping him, but instead you must make every effort to help him unload it. Do not pervert justice for your degraded countryman in his lawsuit. Keep away from anything false. Do not kill a person who has not been proven guilty or one who has been acquitted. Ultimately, I will not let a guilty person escape punishment. Do not accept bribery. Bribery blinds the clear-sighted and twists the words of the just. Do not oppress a foreigner. You know how it feels to be a foreigner, for you were foreigners in Egypt. You may plant your land for 6 years and gather its crops. But during the 7th year you must leave it alone and withdraw from it. The needy among you will then be able to eat from your field, just as you do, and whatever is left over can be eaten by wild animals. This also applies to your vineyard and your olive grove. You may do whatever you must during the 6 weekdays, but you must stop on Saturday. Your donkey and ox must then be able to rest, and your maid's son and the foreigner must be able to relax. Be very careful to keep everything I have said to you. Do not pronounce the name of another deity. You must not let it be heard through your mouth. Offer a sacrifice to me 3 times each year. Keep the festival of Mazzahs. Eat Mazzahs for 7 days, as I commanded you, during the prescribed time in the month of standing grain, since this is when you left Egypt. Do not appear before me empty-handed. Also keep the reaping festival. Through the first fruits of your produce that you planted in the field, there is also the harvest festival, right after the end of the year, when you gather your produce from the field. 3 times each year, every male among you must appear before God, Master of the universe. Do not sacrifice the blood of my Passover offering in the presence of leavened bread. Do not allow the fat of my offering to remain overnight until morning. Bring your first fruits to the temple of God your Lord. Do not cook meat in milk, even that of its mother. I will send an angel before you to safeguard you on the way and bring you to the place that I have prepared. Be careful in his presence and heed his voice. Do not rebel against him. Since my name is with him, he will not pardon your disobedience. But if you obey him and do all that I say, then I will hate your enemies and attack your foes. My angel will go before you and bring you among the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hivites, and Jebusites, and I will then annihilate them. Do not bow down to the gods and do not serve them. Do not follow the ways of these nations. You must tear down their idols and break their sacred pillars. You will then serve God your Lord, and he will bless your bread and your water. I will banish sickness from among you. In your land no woman will suffer miscarriage or remain childless. I will make you live out full lives. I will cause the people who are in your path to be terrified of me, and I will throw all the people among whom you are coming into a panic. I will make all your enemies turn their backs and flee from you. I will send deadly wraths ahead of you, and they will drive out the Hivites, Canaanites, and Hittites before you. I will not drive them out in a single year, however, lest the land become depopulated, and the wild animals become too many for you to contend with. I will drive the inhabitants out little by little, giving you a chance to increase and fully occupy the land. I will set your borders from the Red Sea to the Philistine Sea. From the desert to the river, I will give the land's inhabitants into your hand, and you will drive them before you. Do not make a treaty with these nations or with their gods. Do not allow them to reside in your land, since they may then make you sin to me. You may even end up worshipping their gods, and it will be a fatal trap to you. God said to Moses, "Go up to God along with Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. All of you must bow down at a distance. Only Moses shall then approach God. The others may not come close, and the people may not go up with him." Moses came and told the people all of God's words and all the laws. The people all responded with a single voice, "We will keep every word that God has spoken." Moses wrote down all of God's words. He got up early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain, along with 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. He sent the consecrated young men among the Israelites, and they offered oxen as burnt offerings and peace offerings to God. Moses took half the blood of these offerings and put it into large bowls. The other half he sprinkled on the altar. He took the book of the covenant and read it aloud to the people. They replied, "We will do and obey all that God has declared." Moses then took the rest of the blood and sprinkled it on the people. He said, "This is the blood of the covenant that God is making with you regarding all these words." Moses then went up, along with Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of Israel's elders. They saw a vision of the God of Israel, and under his feet was something like a sapphire brick, like the essence of a clear blue sky. God did not unleash his power against the leaders of the Israelites. They had a vision of the divine, and they ate and drank. God said to Moses, "Come up to me, to the mountain, and remain there. I will give you the stone tablets, the Torah, and the commandment that I have written for the people's instruction." Moses and his aide Joshua set out. Moses went up on God's mountain. He said to the elders, "Wait for us here until we return to you. Aaron and Hur will remain with you. Whoever has a problem can go to them." As soon as Moses reached the mountain top, the cloud covered the mountain. God's glory rested on Mount Sinai, and it was covered by the cloud for 6 days. On the 7th day he called to Moses from the midst of the cloud. To the Israelites, the appearance of God's glory on the mountain top was like a devouring flame. Moses went into the cloud and climbed to the mountain top. Moses was to remain on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. Teruma, God spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelites and have them bring me an offering. Take my offering from everyone whose heart impels him to give. The offering that you take from them shall consist of the following: gold, silver, copper, sky blue wool, dark red wool, wool dyed with crimson warm, linen, goat's wool, reddened ram skins, blue processed skins, acacia wood, oil for the lamp, spices for the anointing oil and the sweet-smelling incense, and sardonyxes and other precious stones from the ephod and breastplate. They shall make me a sanctuary, and I will dwell among them. You must make the tabernacle and all its furnishings following the plan that I am showing you. Make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. Cover it with a layer of pure gold on the inside and outside, and make a gold rim all around its top. Cast 4 gold rings for the ark and place them on its 4 corners, 2 rings on one side and 2 on the other side. Make 2 carrying poles of acacia wood and cover them with a layer of gold. Place the poles in the rings on the sides of the ark so that the ark can be carried with them. The poles must remain in the ark's rings and not be removed. It is in the ark that you will place the testimony that I will give you. Make a golden cover for the ark, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide. Make 2 golden cherubs, hammering them out from the 2 ends of the cover. 1 cherub shall be on the end and 1 on the other. Make the cherubs from the same piece of gold as the cover itself on its 2 ends. The cherubs shall spread their wings upward so that their wings shield the cover. The cherubs shall face one another, but their faces shall also be inclined downward toward the cover. Place the cover on top of the ark after you placed into the ark the testimony that I will give you. I will commune with you there, speaking to you from above the ark cover, from between the 2 cherubs that are on the ark of testimony. In this manner I will give you instructions for the Israelites. Make a table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits high. Cover it with a layer of pure gold and make a gold rim all around it. Make a frame a handbreadth wide all around the table, and on the frame all around the gold rim shall be placed. Make 4 gold rings for the table and place the rings on the 4 corners of its 4 legs. The rings shall be adjacent to the frame, and they shall be receptacles for the poles with which the table is carried. The poles shall be made of acacia wood and covered with a layer of gold. They will be used to carry the table. For the table make bread forms, incense bowls and side frames, as well as the half tubes that will serve as dividers between the loaves of bread. All these shall be made of pure gold. It is on this table that showbread shall be placed before me at all times. Make a menorah out of pure gold. The menorah shall be found by hammering it. Its base, stem, and decorative cups, spears, and flowers must be hammered out of a single piece of gold. 6 branches shall extend from its sides, 3 branches on one side of the menorah and 3 branches on the other side. There shall be 3 embossed cups, as well as a spear and a flower on each and every one of the branches. All 6 branches extending from the menorah stem must be the same in this respect. The shaft of the menorah shall have 4 embossed cups along with its spears and flowers. A spear shall serve as a base for each pair of branches extending from the shaft. This shall be true for all 6 branches extending from the stem of the menorah. The spears and branches shall be an integral part of the menorah. They shall all be hammered out of a single piece of pure gold. Make 7 lamps on the menorah. Its lamps shall be lit so that they shine primarily towards its center. The menorah's wick tongues and ash scoops shall also be made out of pure gold. The menorah, including all its parts, shall be made of a talent of pure gold. Carefully observe the pattern that you will be shown on the mountain and make the menorah in that manner. Make the tabernacle out of 10 large tapestries consisting of twined linen and sky blue, dark red, and crimson wool with a pattern of cherubs woven into them. Each tapestry shall be 28 cubits long and 4 cubits wide, with each tapestry the same size. The first 5 tapestries shall be sewn together, and the second 5 shall also be sewn together. Make loops of sky blue wool at the edge of the innermost tapestry of the first group. Do the same on the edge of the innermost tapestry of the second group. Place 50 loops on the one tapestry and 50 on the edge of the tapestry in the second group. The 2 sets of loops shall be made so that the loops are exactly opposite one another. Make 50 golden fasteners. The 2 groups of tapestries will then be able to be joined together so that the tabernacle will be one piece. Make sheets of goat's wool to serve as a tent over the tabernacle. There shall be 11 such sheets, and each sheet shall be 30 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. All 11 sheets must be the same size. Sew together the first 5 sheets by themselves, and the other 6 sheets by themselves. Half of the 6 sheets shall hang over the front of the tent. Make 50 loops on the edge of the innermost sheet of the first group and 50 loops on the edge of the innermost sheet of the second group. Make 50 copper fasteners. Place the fasteners in the loops, bringing the tent together and making it one. There will then remain an extra portion from what is left over in the breadth of the sheets of the tent. The extra half sheet shall trail behind the back of the tabernacle. The extra cubit on both sides in the length of the tent's sheets shall hang down over the sides of the tapestries of the tabernacle to cover them on both sides. Make a roof for the tent out of reddened ram's skins. Above it make a roof out of the blue processed hides. Make upright beams for the tabernacle out of acacia wood. Each beam shall be 10 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide. Each beam shall have 2 matching square pegs carved out at the bottom. All the beams for the tabernacle must be made in this manner. Make 20 beams for the southern side of the tabernacle. Place 40 silver bases under the 20 beams. There shall be 2 bases under each beam, one to hold each peg. For the second side of the tabernacle to the north, they shall likewise be 20 beams. And 40 silver bases. Here too there shall be 2 sockets under each and every beam. Make 6 beams for the west side of the tabernacle, and place another 2 beams at the corners. All the beams must be exactly next to each other on the bottom. Every page shall also be joined together evenly on top with a square ring. This shall also be done with the 2 beams on the 2 corners. Thus on the west side there will be a total of 8 beams and 60 silver bases, 2 bases under each and every beam. Make crossbars out of acacia wood. There shall be 5 for the beams of the first side of the tabernacle to the south. There shall also be 5 for the beams of the second side to the north, and 5 for the beams of the tabernacle on the western wall. Of these the center crossbar shall go through the middle of the beams, from one end of the tabernacle to the other. Cover the beams with a layer of gold. Also make gold rings on the beams to hold the crossbars. The crossbars shall also be covered with a layer of gold. You will then be ready to set up the tabernacle in the proper manner, as you wish shown on the mountain. Make a cloth partition out of sky blue, dark red and crimson wool woven together with twined linen. Cherubs shall be woven into it, so that they can be seen on both sides. Place it on 4 gold-covered acacia pillars having gold hooks. The pillars shall be set in 4 silver sockets. Place the cloth partition directly under the fastenings holding the tape stripes together. Into the space behind this curtain you will bring the Ark of Testimony. This curtain will thus divide between the sanctuary and the Holy of Holies. You will then place the cover on the Ark of Testimony in the Holy of Holies. Place the table outside the curtain toward the northern wall of the tabernacle. The menorah shall be opposite the table toward the southern wall of the tabernacle. Make a drape for the entrance of the tent out of sky blue, dark red and crimson wool and twined linen. It shall be embroidered work. Make 5 acacia pillars to hold the drape. Cover them with a layer of gold and place golden hooks on them. Cast 5 copper bases for the pillars. Make the altar out of acacia wood. The altar shall be square, 5 cubits by 5 cubits and 3 cubits high. Make protrusions on all 4 sides as an integral part of the altar, then cover it with a layer of copper. Make pots to remove its greasy ashes, as well as scoops, sacrificial basins, flesh pokers and fire pans for the altar. All these instruments shall be made of copper. Make a screen out of copper net to go around the altar. Place 4 copper rings on the 4 corners of the screen. The screen shall be placed below the decorative border of the altar, extending downward until the middle of the altar. Make carrying poles for the altar out of acacia wood covered with a layer of copper. Place the poles in the ring so that the poles will be on the 2 sides of the altar when it is carried. The altar shall be a hollow structure made out of boards. You must make it as you were shown on the mountain. Make the enclosure for the tabernacle in this manner. On the south side they shall be hangings made of twined linen. Like all the other sides, it shall be 100 cubits long. It shall have 20 pillars and 20 copper bases. The hooks and brands for the pillars shall be made of silver. The same shall be done on the north side. The hangings shall be 100 cubits long, with 20 pillars and 20 copper bases, with silver hooks and bands for the pillars. The width of the hangings at the western end of the enclosure shall be 50 cubits, and it shall have 10 pillars and 10 bases. The width of the enclosure at its eastern end shall also be 50 cubits. Of this, the hangings on one side of the entrance shall be 15 cubits long, with 3 pillars and 3 bases. On the other side, the hangings shall also be 15 cubits long, with 3 pillars and 3 bases. The entrance of the enclosure shall be covered with a 20-cubit embroidered drape made of sky blue, dark red, and crimson wool together with twisted linen. It shall have 4 pillars and 4 bases. All the pillars of the outer enclosure shall have silver hoops, silver hooks, and copper bases. The length of the enclosure shall be 100 cubits, and its width shall be 50 cubits. The pillars holding the hangings of twined linen shall be 5 cubits high, and their bases shall be made of copper. All the equipment used to make the tabernacle shall be made out of copper. The stakes for the tabernacle itself and all the stakes for the enclosure shall also be made of copper. Tetzaveh. You, Moses, must command the Israelites to bring you clear illuminating oil made from hand-crushed olives to keep the lamp constantly burning. Aaron and his sons shall arrange for the lamps to burn from evening until morning in God's presence, in the communion tent outside the cloth partition that conceals the ark of testimony. It is a rule for all time that this oil shall come from the Israelites. Separate your brother Aaron and his sons from among the Israelites and bring them close to you, so that Aaron and his sons Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar can become priests to me. Make sacred vestments that are both dignified and beautiful for your brother Aaron. Speak to everyone who is naturally talented, to whom I have granted a spirit of wisdom, and let them make Aaron's vestments. These vestments will then be used to consecrate him and make him a priest to me. These are the vestments that they shall make: a breastplate, an ephod, a robe, a knitted tunic, a turban, and a sash. Make them as sacred vestments for Aaron and his sons, so that they will be able to be priests to me. The skilled workers shall take the gold, the sky blue, dark red, and crimson wool, and the linen. These workers shall make the ephod out of gold thread, sky blue, dark red, and crimson wool together with twined linen, in a patterned brocade. It shall have 2 attached shoulder pieces at its 2 corners, and these shall be sewn to it. The ephod's belt, which is made in the same manner as the ephod itself, shall be woven together with it out of gold thread, sky blue, dark red, and crimson wool, and twined linen. Take 2 sardonyx stones and engrave on them the names of Israel's sons. There shall be 6 names on one stone, and the remaining 6 names on the second stone inscribed in the order of their birth. The names of Israel's sons shall be engraved by a skilled dweller, and it shall appear like the engraving on a signet ring. These stones shall then be placed in gold settings. Place the 2 stones on the 2 shoulder pieces of the ephod as remembrance stones for Israel's sons. Make gold settings. Also make matched cables of pure gold, braided like cords. The braided cables shall then be attached to the settings. Make a decision breastplate. It shall be a patterned brocade like the ephod. Make it out of gold, thread, sky blue, dark red, and crimson wool, and twined linen. When folded over, it shall be a span long and a span wide. Set it with 4 rows of mountain stones. The first of these rows shall contain a carnelian, an emerald, and a topaz. The second row, carbuncle, sapphire, beryl. The third row, jacinth, agate, amethyst. The fourth row, chrysolite, onyx, jasper. These stones shall be placed in gold settings. The stones shall contain the names of the 12 sons of Israel. one for each of the 12 stones. Each one's name shall be engraved as on a signet ring to represent the 12 tribes. Make mashed cables out of pure gold, braided like cords for the breastplate. Make 2 gold rings for the breastplate and attach them to the 2 upper corners of the breastplate. Attach the 2 gold braids to the 2 rings on the 2 corners of the breastplate. Attach the 2 braids on the 2 corners to the 2 settings, and they shall thus be attached to the 2 shoulder pieces of the ephod toward the front. Make 2 gold rings and attach them to the 2 lower corners of the breastplate, on the edge that is toward the inside of the ephod. Make another 2 gold rings and attach them to the bottoms of the 2 shoulder pieces toward the front where they are sewn on, above the ephod's belt. Lace the lower rings of the breastplate to the lower rings of the ephod with a twist of sky blue wool, so that the breastplate shall remain directly above the ephod's belt. Aaron will thus carry the names of Israel's sons on the decision breastplate over his heart when he comes into the sanctuary. It shall be constant remembrance before God. Place the Urim and Thummim in the decision breastplate, and they shall be over Aaron's heart when he comes before God. Aaron will then carry the decision-making device for the Israelites before God at all times. Make the robe that is worn under the ephod completely out of sky blue wool. It shall have an opening for the head in the middle, and this opening shall have a woven border all around it, like there is around the head opening of a coat of mail. The neck shall thus not be left open. On the bottom of the robe place pomegranates made of sky blue, dark red, and crimson wool all along its lower border. In between these pomegranates all around there shall be gold bells. Thus there shall be a gold bell and a pomegranate, a gold bell and a pomegranate all around the lower edge of the robe. Aaron shall wear this robe when he performs the divine service. The sounds of the bell shall be heard when he enters the sanctuary before God and when he goes out, so that he not die. Make a forehead plate of pure gold and engrave on it in the same manner as a signet ring the words "Holy to God." Attach a twist of sky blue wool to it so that it can be worn next to the turban. It must be worn right near the front of the turban. This plate shall be worn on Aaron's forehead. Aaron shall thus carry the device that expiates errors in the sacred offerings that the Israelites consecrate as holy gifts. It shall be on his forehead at all times to make these offerings acceptable for the Israelites before God. Knit the tunic out of linen. Also make the turban out of linen and an embroidered sash. For Aaron's sons, make tunics and sashes. Also make them hats that are both dignified and beautiful. Place these vestments on Aaron and his sons. Then anoint them and install them, sanctifying them to be priests to me. Also make linen pants to cover their nakedness, reaching from their waists to their thighs. All these vestments must be worn by Aaron and his sons whenever they enter the communion tent or offer sacrifice on the altar, performing the divine service in the sanctuary. Otherwise they will have committed a sin and they will die. This shall be a law for Aaron and his descendants after him for all time. This is what you, Moses, must do to consecrate Aaron and his sons as priests to me. Take a young bull, 2 unblemished rams, loaves of unleavened bread, unleavened loaves kneaded with olive oil, and flat matzahs brushed with olive oil. All the cakes must be made of fine wheat flour. Place all the cakes in a basket and bring them in the basket along with the young bull and 2 rams. Bring Aaron and his sons to the door of the communion tent and immerse them in a mikvah. Take the vestments and place the tunic, the ephod's robe, the ephod and the breastplate on Aaron. Bind him with the ephod's belt. Then place the turban on his head and place the sacred plate below the turban. Take the anointing oil, pour a little on Aaron's head and anoint him. Bring forth Aaron's sons and dress them with the linen tunics. His sons shall wear belts just like Aaron, and they shall also wear hats. You shall thus install Aaron and his sons as priests, and this procedure shall remain a law for all time. Bring the young bull before the communion tent, and have Aaron and his sons place their hands on the bull's head. Slaughter the bull before God at the door of the communion tent. Take the bull's blood and place it on the altar's protrusions with your finger. Spill all the remaining blood on the altar's foundation. Take all the fat that covers the inner organs as well as the lobe of the liver and the 2 kidneys with the fat around them, and burn them on the altar. You must burn the bull's flesh along with its skin and the food in its intestines. Outside the camp, it is a sin offering. Take the first ram and have Aaron and his sons place their hands on its head. When you then slaughter the ram, take its blood and sprinkle it on all sides of the altar. Cut the ram into pieces, then wash off its intestines and legs and place them together with the cut up pieces of the ram and its head. Burn the entire ram on the altar. It is a burnt offering to God. It shall thus be an appeasing fragrance, a fire offering to God. Take the second ram and have Aaron and his sons place their hands on its head. When you then slaughter the ram, take its blood and place some of it on the right ear lobe of Aaron and his sons, as well as on their right thumbs and right big toes. Sprinkle the remaining blood on all sides of the altar. Collect the blood that is on the altar, and together with the anointing oil, sprinkle it on Aaron and his vestments, as well as on his sons and their vestments. This will consecrate Aaron and his vestments as well as his sons and their vestments. Take the intestinal fat of the second ram along with its broad tail, the fatty layer covering the stomachs, the lobe of the liver, the 2 kidneys together with the fat, and the right hind leg, since this ram is an installation offering. Also take 1 cake of unleavened bread, 1 loaf of oil bread, and 1 flat cake from the basket of unleavened bread that is before God. Place all these items onto the open hands of Aaron and his sons, and have them wave these items in the prescribed motions of a wave offering before God. Then take these items from their hands and burn them on the altar after the first ram, which is a burnt offering. Let it be an appeasing fragrance before God, since it is a fire offering to God. Take the breast of Aaron's installation ram and wave it in the motions prescribed for a wave offering. This shall be your portion, Moses. Sanctify the breast of the wave offering and the hind leg of the uplifted offering for all time. These are the parts of the installation ram of Aaron and his sons that were waved with the prescribed horizontal and vertical motions. It shall be a law for all times that this be an offering for Aaron and his sons from the Israelites, taken from the peace offerings as a priestly offering to God. Aaron's sacred vestments shall also be passed on to his descendants after him to give them special status and to install them. The descendant who takes Aaron's place to enter the communion tent and perform the divine service in the inner sanctuary must first put on these vestments for 7 consecutive days. Take the rest of the installation ram and cook its flesh in a sanctified area. Aaron and his sons shall eat the ram's meat along with the bread in the basket near the entrance of the communion tent. They will gain atonement by eating these offerings, and they will thus be installed to their consecrated rank. These offerings are sacred and therefore may not be eaten by any outsider. If any meat of the installation offering or any of the bread is left over until morning, you must burn the leftovers in the fire. Since it is consecrated, it may not be eaten. Do exactly as I have instructed you for Aaron and his sons. The installation shall take 7 days. Sacrifice a young bull as a sin offering each day for atonement. By sprinkling the blood of this offering on the altar, you will atone for any misdeed associated with making it, and by anointing it, you will sanctify it. For all 7 days you shall make such atonement for the altar and sanctify it, thus making the altar holy of holies. Anything that touches the altar will therefore become sanctified. This is what you must do for the altar. Offer 2 yearling sheep each day consecutively. The first sheep shall be offered in the morning, and the second sheep in the afternoon. Offer 1/10 ephah, fine flour mixed with 1/4 hin pressed olive oil, and a libation of 1/4 hin wine with the first sheep. Offer the second sheep in the afternoon along with a meal offering and libation just like that of the sheep offered in the morning. It shall then be an appeasing fragrance to God. This shall also be the continual burnt offering for all generations. It shall be offered before God at the entrance of the communion tent, the place where I commune with all the people by speaking with you there. It is there that I will commune with the Israelites, and the tabernacle will thus be sanctified with my glory. I will sanctify the communion tent and the altar, and I will also sanctify Aaron and his sons to be priests to me. I will make my presence felt among the Israelites, and I will be a God for them. They will realize that I, God their Lord, brought them out of Egypt to make my presence felt among them. I am God their Lord. Make an altar to burn incense out of acacia wood. It shall be square, a cubit long and a cubit wide, and 2 cubits high, including its horns. Cover it with a layer of pure gold. On its top, its wall all around, and its horns, make a gold rim all around it. Place 2 gold rings under the altar's rim on its 2 opposite sides as receptacles to hold the poles with which it is carried. Make the carrying poles out of acacia wood and cover them with a layer of gold. Place this altar in front of the cloth partition concealing the testimony ark, before the cloth partition concealing the testimony area where I commune with you. Aaron shall burn incense on this altar each morning when he cleans out the lamps. He shall also burn incense before evening when he lights the lamps. Thus for all generations there will be incense before God at all times. Do not burn any unauthorized incense on it. Furthermore, do not offer any animal sacrifice, meal offering, or libation on it. Furthermore, once each year, Aaron shall make atonement on the horns of this altar. For all generations, he shall make atonement with the blood of the atonement sacrifice once each year. This altar shall be a holy of holies to God.
Kitisa. God spoke to Moses saying, when you take a census of the Israelites to determine their numbers, each one shall be counted by giving an atonement offering for his life. In this manner they will not be stricken by the plague when they are counted. Everyone including the census must give a half shekel. This shall be by the sanctuary standard, where a shekel is 20 gerahs. It is half of such a shekel that must be given as an offering to God. Every man over 20 years old shall be included in the census and give this offering to God. The rich may not give more, and the poor may not give less than this half shekel. It is an offering to God to atone for your lives. You will take this atonement money from the Israelites and use it for making the communion tent. It will thus be a remembrance for the Israelites before God to atone for your lives. God spoke to Moses saying, make a copper washstand along with the copper base for it. Place it between the altar and the communion tent and fill it with water for washing. Aaron and his sons must wash their hands and feet from this washstand. If they are not to die, they must wash with the water of this washstand before entering the communion tent or approaching the altar to perform the divine service, presenting a fire offering to God. If they are not to deserve death, they must first wash their hands and feet. This shall be for Aaron and his descendants, a law for all time, for all generations. God spoke to Moses saying, you must take the finest fragrances, 500 shekels of distilled myrrh, 2 half portions each consisting of 250 shekels of fragrant cinnamon and 250 shekels of fragrant cane, and 500 shekels of cassia, all measured by the sanctuary standard, along with a gallon of olive oil. Make it into sacred anointing oil. It shall be a blended compound as made by a skilled perfumer, made specially for the sacred anointing oil. Then use it to anoint the communion tent, the ark of testimony, the table and all its utensils, the menorah and its utensils, the incense altar, the sacrificial altar and all its utensils, the washstand and its base. You will thus sanctify them, making them holy of holies, so that anything touching them becomes sanctified. You must also anoint Aaron and his sons, sanctifying them as priests to me. Speak to the Israelites and tell them, this shall be the sacred anointing oil to me for all generations. Do not pour it on the skin of any unauthorized person, and do not duplicate it with a similar formula. It is holy and it must remain sacred to you. If a person blends a similar formula or places it on an unauthorized person, he shall be cut off spiritually from his people. God said to Moses, take fragrances such as balsam, onycha, galbanum, and pure frankincense, all of the same weight, as well as other specified fragrances. Make the mixture into incense as compounded by a master perfumer, well blended, pure and holy. Grind it very finely and place it before the ark of testimony in the communion tent where I commune with you. It shall be holy of holies to you. Do not duplicate the formula of the incense that you are making for personal use, since it must remain sacred to God. If a person makes it to enjoy its fragrance, he shall be cut off spiritually from his people. God spoke to Moses, saying, I have selected Bezalel son of Uri, son of Chur, of the tribe of Judah by name. I have filled him with the divine spirit, with wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, and with the talent for all types of craftsmanship. He will be able to devise plans as well as work in gold, silver, and copper, cut stones to be set, carve wood, and do other work. I have also given him Oholiab son of Achisamach of the tribe of Dan as an assistant. Besides this, I have placed wisdom in the heart of every naturally talented person. They will thus make all that I have ordered: the communion tent, the ark for the testimony, the ark cover to go on it, all the utensils for the tent, the table and its utensils, the pure gold menorah and all its utensils, the incense altar, the sacrificial altar and all its utensils, the washstand and its base, the packing clothes, the sacred vestments for Aaron the priest, the vestments that his sons wear to serve, the anointing oil and the incense for the sanctuary. They will thus do all that I command. God told Moses to speak to the Israelites and say to them, you must still keep my Sabbaths. It is a sign between me and you for all generations, to make you realize that I, God, am making you holy. Therefore keep the Sabbath as something sacred to you. Anyone doing work on the Sabbath shall be cut off spiritually from his people, and therefore anyone violating it shall be put to death. Do your work during the 6 weekdays, but keep Saturday as a Sabbath of Sabbaths, holy to God. Whoever does any work on Saturday shall be put to death. The Israelites shall thus keep the Sabbath, making it a day of rest for all generations as an eternal covenant. It is a sign between me and the Israelites that during the 6 weekdays God made heaven and earth, but on Saturday he ceased working and withdrew to the spiritual. When God finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai, he gave him 2 tablets of the testimony. They were stone tablets written with God's finger. Meanwhile, the people began to realize that Moses was taking a long time to come down from the mountain. They gathered around Aaron and said to him, make us an oracle to lead us. We have no idea what happened to Moses, the man who brought us out of Egypt. Take the rings of the ears of your wives and children, replied Aaron, bring them to me. All the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took the rings from the people and had someone from the gold in a mold, casting it into a calf. Some of the people began to say, this Israel is your God who brought you out of Egypt. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before the calf. Aaron made an announcement and said, tomorrow there will be a festival to God. Getting up early the next morning, the people sacrificed burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. The people sat down to eat and drink and then got up to enjoy themselves. God declared to Moses, go down, for the people whom you brought out of Egypt have become corrupt. They have been quick to leave the way that I ordered them to follow, and they have made themselves a cast metal calf. They have bowed down and offered sacrifice to it, exclaiming, this Israel is your God who brought you out of Egypt. God then said to Moses, I have observed the people, and they are an unbending group. Now do not try to stop me when I unleash my wrath against them to destroy them. I will then make you into a great nation. Moses began to plead before God his Lord. He said, O God, why unleash your wrath against your people whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a show of force? Why should Egypt be able to say that you took them out with evil intentions, to kill them in the hill country and wipe them out from the face of the earth? Withdraw your display of anger and refrain from doing evil to your people. Remember your servants Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. You swore to them by your very essence and declared that you would make their descendants as numerous as the stars of the sky, giving their descendants the land you promised so that they would be able to occupy it forever. God refrained from doing the evil that he planned for his people. Moses turned around and began going down the mountain with the two tablets of testimony in his hand. They were tablets written on both sides, with the writing visible from either side. The tablets were made by God and written with God's script engraved on the tablets. Joshua heard the sound of the people rejoicing, and he said to Moses, "It sounds as though there is a battle going on in the camp." "It is not the song of victory," replied Moses, "nor the dirge of the defeated. What I hear is just plain singing." As he approached the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, Moses displayed anger and threw down the tablets that were in his hand, shattering them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf that the people had made and burnt it in fire, grinding it into fine powder. He then scattered it on the water and made the Israelites drink it. Moses said to Aaron, "What did the people do to you, that you allowed them to commit such a great sin?" "Do not be angry, my lord," replied Aaron, "but you must realize that the people have bad tendencies. They said to me, 'Make an oracle to lead us, since we do not know what happened to Moses, the man who took us out of Egypt.' When I responded to them, 'Who has gold?' they took it off and gave it to me. I threw the gold into the fire, and the result was this calf." Moses realized that the people had actually been restrained. Aaron had restrained them, doing only a small part of what the outspoken ones had demanded. Moses stood up at the camp's entrance and announced, "Whoever is for God, join me." All the Levites gathered around him. He said to them, "This is what God, Lord of Israel, says. Let each man put on his sword and go from one gate to the other in the camp. Let each one kill all those involved in the idolatry, even his own brother, close friend, or relative." The Levites did as Moses had ordered, and approximately 3,000 people were killed that day. Moses said, "Today you can be ordained as a tribe dedicated to God with a special blessing." Men have been willing to kill even their own sons and brothers at God's command. The next day Moses said to the people, "You have committed a terrible sin. Now I will go back up to God and try to gain atonement for your crime." Moses went back up to God and he said, "The people have committed a terrible sin by making a golden idol. Now if you would please forgive this sin, if not, you can blot me out from the book that you have written." God replied to Moses, "I will blot out from my book those who have sinned against me. Now go, you still have to lead the people to the place that I described to you. I will send my angel before you. Still, when I grant special providence to the people, I will take this sin of theirs into account." God then struck the people with a plague because of the calf that Aaron had made. God declared to Moses, "You and the people you took out of Egypt will have to leave this place and go to the land regarding which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that I would give it to their descendants. I will send an angel ahead of you and drive out the Canaanites, Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. You will thus go to a land flowing with milk and honey. However, I will not go with you, since you are an unbending people, and I may destroy you along the way." When they heard this bad news, the people began to mourn. They stopped wearing jewelry. God told Moses to say to the Israelites, "You are an unbending people. In just 1 second I can go among you and utterly destroy you. Now take off your jewelry, and I will know what to do with you." From that time at Mount Horeb on, the people no longer wore their jewelry. Moses took his tent and set it up outside the camp at a distance. He called it the meeting tent. Later, whoever sought God would go to the meeting tent outside the camp. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people would rise, and each person would stand near his own tent, gazing at Moses until he would come to his tent. When Moses went into the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the tent's entrance, and God would speak to Moses. When the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the tent's entrance, the people would rise, and each one would bow down at the entrance of his tent. God would speak to Moses face to face, just as a person speaks to a close friend. Moses would then return to the camp, but his aide, the young man Joshua son of Nun, did not leave the tent. Moses said to God, "You told me to bring these people to the promised land, but you did not tell me whom you would send with me. You also said that you know me by name and that you are pleased with me. Now if you are indeed pleased with me, allow me to know your ways, so that I will know how to remain pleasing to you. Also you must confirm that this nation is your people. My presence will go and lead you, replied God. Moses said, if your presence does not accompany us, do not make us leave this place. Unless you accompany us, how can it be known that I and your people are pleasing to you? But if you do, I and your people will be distinguished from every nation on the face of the earth. God said to Moses, since you have been pleasing to me and I know you by name, I will also fulfill this request of yours. Please let me have a vision of your glory, begged Moses. God replied, I will make all my good pass before you and reveal the divine name in your presence. But still, I will have mercy and show kindness to whomever I desire. God then explained, you cannot have a vision of my presence. A man cannot have a vision of me and still exist. God then said, I have a special place where you can stand on the rocky mountain. When my glory passes by, I will place you in a crevice in the mountain, protecting you with my power until I pass by. I will then remove my protective power, and you will have a vision of what follows from my existence. My essence itself, however, will not be seen. God said to Moses, carve out 2 tablets for yourself, just like the first ones. I will write on those tablets the same words that were on the first tablets that you broke. Be ready in the morning so that you will be able to climb Mount Sinai in the morning and stand waiting for me on the mountain peak. No man may climb up with you, and no one else may appear on the entire mountain. Even the cattle and sheep may not graze near the mountain. Moses carved out 2 stone tablets like the first. He then got up early in the morning and climbed Mount Sinai as God had commanded him. Taking the 2 stone tablets in his hand, God revealed himself in a cloud and it stood there with Moses. Moses called out in God's name. God passed by before Moses and proclaimed, God, God, omnipotent, merciful and kind, slow to anger, with tremendous resources of love and truth. He remembers deeds of love for thousands of generations, forgiving sin, rebellion and error. He does not clear those who do not repent, but keeps in mind the sins of the fathers to their children and grandchildren to the third and fourth generation. Moses quickly bowed his head and prostrated himself. He said, if you are indeed pleased with me, O God, let my Lord go among us. This nation may be unbending, but forgive our sins and errors and make us your own. God said, I will make a covenant before all your people and will do miracles that have never been brought into existence in all the world. Among any nation, all the people among whom you dwell will see how fearsome are the deeds that I, God, am doing with you. Be very careful with regard to what I am instructing you today. I will drive the Amorites, Canaanites, Hivites, Perizzites, Hittites, and Jebusites out before you. Be most careful not to make a treaty with the people who live in the land where you are coming, since they can be a fatal trap to you. You must shatter the altars, break down their sacred pillars, and cut down the Asherah trees. Do not bow down to any other god, for God is known as one who demands exclusive worship, and He does indeed demand it. Be careful that you not make a treaty with the people who live in the land. When they practice their religion and sacrifice to their gods, they will invite you, and you will end up eating their sacrifice. You will then allow their daughters to marry your sons, and when their daughters worship their gods, they will lead your sons to follow their religion. Do not make any cast metal idols. Keep the festival of matzahs, eat matzahs for 7 days as I commanded. In the designated time in the month of standing grain, it was in the month of standing grain that you left Egypt. The firstborn initiating every womb is mine. Among all your livestock, you must separate out the males of the firstborn cattle and sheep. The firstborn of a donkey must be redeemed with a sheep, and if it is not redeemed, you must decapitate it. You must also redeem every firstborn among your sons. Do not appear before me empty handed. You may work during the 6 weekdays, but on Saturday you must stop working, ceasing from all plowing and reaping. Keep the festival of Shavuot through the first fruits of your wheat harvest. Also keep the harvest festival soon after the year changes. 3 times each year all your males shall thus present themselves before God the Master, Lord of Israel. When I expel the other nations before you and extend your boundaries, no one will be envious of your land when you go to be seen in God's presence 3 times each year. Do not slaughter the Passover sacrifice with leaven in your possession. Do not allow the Passover sacrifice to remain overnight until morning. Bring the first fruits of your land to the temple of God your Lord. Do not eat meat cooked in milk, even that of its own mother. God said to Moses, "Write these words down for yourself, since it is through these words that I have made a covenant with you and Israel." Moses remained there with God on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights without eating bread nor drinking water. God wrote the words of the covenant consisting of the 10 commandments on the tablets. Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand. As Moses descended from the mountain, he did not realize that the skin of his face had become luminous when God had spoken to him. When Aaron and all the Israelites saw that the skin of Moses' face was shining with a brilliant light, they were afraid to come close to him. Moses summoned them, and when Aaron and all the community leaders returned to him, Moses spoke to them. After that, all the Israelites approached, and Moses gave them instructions regarding all that God had told him on Mount Sinai. When Moses finished speaking with them, he placed a hood over his face. Whenever Moses came before God to speak with him, he would remove the hood until he was ready to leave. He would then go out and speak to the Israelites, telling them what he had been commanded. The Israelites would see that the skin of Moses' face was glowing brilliantly. Moses would then replace the hood over his face until he would once again speak with God.
Vayachel, Moses assembled the entire Israelite community and said to them, "These are the words that God has commanded for you to do. You may do work during the 6 weekdays, but Saturday must be kept holy as a Sabbath of Sabbaths to God. Whoever does any work on that day shall be put to death. Do not ignite any fire on the Sabbath, no matter where you may live." Moses said to the entire Israelite community, "This is the word that God has commanded. Collect among yourselves an elevated offering to God. If a person feels like giving an offering to God, he can bring any of the following: gold, silver, copper, sky blue wool, dark red wool, wool dyed with the crimson worm, fine linen, goat's wool, reddened ram skins, blue processed hides, acacia wood, oil for the lamp, fragrances for the anointing oil and perfume incense, as well as sardonyxes and other precious stones for the ephod and the breastplate. Every naturally talented individual among you shall come forth and make all that God has ordered. The tabernacle along with its overtent, roof, fasteners, beams, crossbars and pillars, the ark and its carrying poles, the ark cover, the cloth partition, the table along with its carrying poles, all its utensils and the showbread, the menorah lamp along with its utensils, lights and illuminating oil, the incense altar and its carrying poles, the anointing oil, the perfumed incense, the drape for the tabernacle's entrance, the sacrificial altar along with its carrying poles and all its utensils, the washstand and its base, the hangings for the enclosure, its pillars and bases, the drape for the enclosure's entrance, the stakes for the tent, the stakes for the enclosure, the tying ropes, the packing clothes for sacred use, the sacred vestments for Aaron the priest, and the vestments that his sons will wear to serve. The entire Israelite community left Moses' presence. Each person who was ready to volunteer then came forward. Also each one who wanted to give brought a donation to God for the making of the communion tent, all its necessities, and the sacred vestments. The men accompanied the women, and those who wanted to make a donation brought bracelets, earrings, finger rings, and body ornaments, all made of gold. They were also all the ones who donated a wave offering of gold to God. Every person who had sky blue wool, dark red wool, crimson wool, fine linen, goat's wool, reddened rams, skins, or blue processed hides brought these items. Whoever donated silver or copper brought it as a divine offering, and anyone who had acacia wood that could be used for the dedicated work also brought it. Every skilled woman put her hand to spinning, and they all brought the spun yarn of sky blue wool, dark red wool, crimson wool, and fine linen. Highly skilled women volunteers also spun the goat's wool. The tribal leaders brought the sardonyxes and other precious stones for the ephod and breastplate, as well as the fragrances and olive oil for the lamp, the anointing oil and the perfumed incense. Every man and woman among the Israelites who felt an urge to give something for all the work that God had ordered through Moses, brought a donation for God. Moses said to the Israelites, God has selected Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Chur, of the tribe of Judah, and has filled him with a divine spirit of wisdom, understanding, knowledge, and a talent for all types of craftsmanship. He will thus be able to devise plans, work in gold, silver, and copper, cut stones to be set, and do carpentry and other skilled work. God also gave to him an Oholiab, son of Achiasamach, of the tribe of Dan, the ability to teach others. He has granted them a natural talent for all craftsmanship, to form materials, to brocade or embroider patterns with sky blue, dark red, and crimson wool and fine linen, and to weave. They will thus be able to do all the necessary work and planning. Bezalel shall thus do all that God commanded, along with Oholiab and every other skilled individual, to whom God has granted the wisdom and understanding to know how to do all the work necessary for the sacred task. Moses summoned Bezalel, Oholiab, and all the other skilled individuals upon whom God had bestowed a natural talent, all who volunteered to dedicate themselves to completing the task. In Moses' presence, they took the entire donation that the Israelites had brought to complete the work on the sacred task. Meanwhile, the Israelites were bringing more gifts each morning. All the craftsmen engaged in the sacred work left the work they were doing and came to Moses. They said to Moses, "The people are bringing much more than is needed for the work that God commanded to do." Moses gave orders to make an announcement in the camp, "Let no man or woman bring any more material for the sacred offering." The people stopped bringing, but the materials were more than enough for all the work that had to be done. All the most talented craftsmen worked on the tabernacle itself, which consisted of 10 tape stripes made of twined linen, together with sky blue, dark red, and crimson wool, brocaded with cherubs. All the tape stripes were the same size, 28 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. The first 5 tape stripes were sewn together, as with the other 5. Loops of sky blue wool were made on the innermost tapestry of the second group of 5. There were 50 loops on the first tapestry and 50 on its counterpart on the second group, with all the loops on one side parallel to those on the other side. 50 gold fasteners were made to attach the sets of tape stripes together to make the tabernacle into a single unit. They made sheets of goat's wool for the outer tent covering the tabernacle. There were 11 such sheets, and all 11 were the same size, 30 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. 5 sheets were sewn together to form one group, and 6 to form the second group. 50 loops were made on the innermost sheet of the first group and another 50 on the innermost sheet of the second group. They made 50 copper fasteners to join the over tent together and make it a single unit. They made a roof for the tabernacle out of reddened rams skins and another roof above it out of blue processed hides. They made the upright beams for the tabernacle out of acacia wood. Each beam was 10 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide. With 2 matching square pegs on the bottom, all the tabernacle's beams were made in this manner. They made 20 beams for the southern wall of the tabernacle. Along with 40 silver bases to go under the 20 beams, there were 2 bases under each beam, 1 base going under each of the 2 square pegs on the bottom of each beam. On the second wall of the tabernacle to the north, they also made 20 beams. Along with 40 silver bases, 2 bases under each of the beams, 2 pegs. For the western wall of the tabernacle they made 6 beams, along with 2 finishing beams for the corners of the tabernacle. At the bottom all the beams were joined next to one another exactly, and on top every pair was joined with a square ring. This was also true of the 2 beams on the 2 corners. Thus on the west side there was a total of 8 beams, along with 16 bases, 2 bases for each beam. They made 5 crossbars of acacia wood for the first wall of the tabernacle to the south. A second set of 5 crossbars for the second wall of the tabernacle to the north and 5 similar crossbars for the western wall of the tabernacle. The middle crossbar was made to go through the center of the beams from one end to the other. They covered the beams with a layer of gold. They also made the rings that would hold the crossbars out of gold, and they covered the crossbars themselves with a layer of gold. They made the cloth partition out of sky blue, dark red and crimson wool and twined linen, brocaded with cherubs. They made 4 acacia poles to hold it, covering the poles with a layer of gold with gold hooks attached. They also cast 4 silver bases for these poles. They made an embroidered grave for the tent's entrance out of sky blue, dark red and crimson wool and twined linen. There were 5 poles to hold it along with gold hooks, caps and bands. There were also 5 copper bases for these poles. Bezalel made the ark of acacia wood 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide and 1.5 cubits high. He covered it with a layer of pure gold on the inside and made a gold rim for it all around. He cast 4 gold rings for its 4 corners, 2 rings for one side and 2 for the other. He made carrying poles of acacia wood and covered them with a layer of gold. He then placed the carrying poles in the rings on the ark's sides, so that the ark could be carried with them. He made a pure gold cover 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide. He made 2 golden cherubs, hammering them out from the 2 ends of the cover. The cherubs were made on both ends from the same piece of metal as the cover itself, 1 cherub on one end and 1 on the other. The cherubs had their wings outstretched upward so as to shield the ark cover with their wings. They faced one another, with their faces somewhat inclined downward toward the cover. He made the table out of acacia wood 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide and 1.5 cubits high. He covered it with a layer of pure gold and made it a gold rim all around. He made a frame for it, 1 handbreadth wide, and placed the gold rim on the frame. He cast 4 gold rings for the table, placing the rings on the corners of its 4 legs. The rings were adjacent to the frame and were meant to hold the poles used to carry the table. He made acacia poles to carry the table and covered them with a layer of gold. He made the utensils to go on the table, bread forms and incense bowls, as well as half tubes and side frames to serve as dividers for the bread, all out of pure gold. He made the menorah out of pure gold, hammering the menorah along with its base, stem and decorative cups, spears and flowers out of a single piece of metal. 6 branches extended from the menorah's sides, 3 on one and 3 on the other. There were 3 embossed cups, a spear and a flower on each branch. This was true of all 6 branches extending from the menorah. The menorah's shaft had 4 embossed cups along with its own spears and flowers. There was a spear at the base of each of the 3 pairs of branches extending from the stem. This was true of all 6 of the menorah's branches. The spears and branches were all made from the same ingot as the menorah itself. It was all hammered from a single piece of pure gold. He thus made the menorah with 7 lamps. He also made its wick tongs and ash scoops out of pure gold. The menorah and all its parts were made from a talent of gold. He made the incense altar of acacia wood 1 cubit square and including its horns 2 cubits high. He covered its top, its wall all around and its horns with a layer of pure gold and made it a gold rim all around. He made 2 rings for the altar below its rim on its 2 opposite sides so as to hold the poles with which the altar was carried. He made the carrying poles out of acacia wood and covered them with a layer of gold. Using the techniques of a perfumer, he made the sacred anointing oil and the pure perfume incense. He made the sacrificial altar out of acacia wood 5 cubits square and 3 cubits high. He made the protrusions on all 4 corners as an integral part of the altar's structure and then covered the entire structure with a layer of copper. He made all the altar's utensils, pots, scoops, sacrificial basins, flesh pokers and fire pans. They were all made out of copper. He made a screen out of copper mesh and placed it below the altar's decorative border, extending downward until the middle of the altar. He cast 4 rings on the copper screen to hold the carrying poles. He made acacia carrying poles and covered them with a layer of copper. He placed the carrying poles in the rings on the altar's corners so that it could be carried. He constructed the altar as a hollow structure made out of boards. He made the copper washstand and its copper base out of the mirrors of the dedicated women who congregated at the entrance of the communion tent. He made the enclosure for the tabernacle on the south side. The twined linen hangings were 100 cubits long, held by 20 poles with 20 copper bases and silver pole hooks and bands. On the north side it was also 100 cubits long, held by 20 poles with 20 copper bases and silver pole hooks and bands. On the west side the curtains were 50 cubits, held by 10 poles with 10 bases and silver pole hooks and bands. The east side was also 50 cubits wide. The hangings on one side of the enclosure were 15 cubits long, held by 3 poles with 3 bases. The same was true of the other side of the enclosure's entrance, so that the hangings they were also 15 cubits wide, held by 3 poles with 3 bases. All the enclosure's hangings were made of twined linen. The bases for the poles were made of copper, while the pole hooks and bands were made of silver. All the enclosure's poles also had silver caps, and the poles themselves were ringed with silver. The drape for the enclosure's entrance was embroidered out of sky blue, dark red and crimson wool together with twined linen. It was 20 cubits long and 5 cubits wide or high, just like the other hangings of the enclosure. It was held with 4 poles, having 4 copper bases and silver hooks, caps and bands. All the stakes used for the tabernacle itself and the surrounding enclosure were made of copper. Pikure. These are the accounts of the tabernacle of testimony, which were calculated by Moses, ordered by the Levites under Ithamar, son of Aaron the priest. Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Chur, of the tribe of Judah, used these materials to make all that God had commanded Moses. With him was Oholiab, son of Achisamach, of the tribe of Dan, who was a skilled carpenter and was also expert in brocading and embroidering with sky blue, dark red and crimson wool and fine linen. All the gold was used in the work to complete the sacred task. The amount of gold donated as a wave offering was 29 talents and 730 shekels by the sanctuary standard. The silver census money collected from the community came out to 100 talents and 1,775 shekels by the sanctuary standard. This consisted of a beka, which was a half shekel by sanctuary standards, for each of the 6,03,550 men over 20 years old included in the census. The 100 talents were used to cast the bases for the sanctuary and the cloth partition. They were a total of 100 bases made out of the 100 talents, 1 talent for each base. Out of the remaining 1,775 shekels, the hooks, caps and inlaid hoops for the pillars were made. The copper donated as a wave offering came out to 70 talents and 2,400 shekels. It was used to make the bases for the communion tent's entrance, the copper altar along with its copper screen and all the altar's utensils, the bases for the surrounding enclosure, the bases for the enclosure's entrance, the stakes for the tabernacle and the stakes for the surrounding enclosure. From the sky blue, dark red and crimson wool they made the packing cloths for sacred use. They also made the sacred vestments for Aaron as God had commanded Moses. He made the ephod out of gold thread, sky blue, dark red and crimson wool and twined linen. They beat out thin sheets of gold and cut them into threads, which were then included in the sky blue, dark red and crimson wool and the fine linen. The ephod was made as a patterned brocade. They made shoulder pieces for it, sewn to its 2 corners. The ephod's attached belt woven together with it was made in the same manner, also out of gold thread, sky blue, dark red and crimson wool and twined linen. It was thus made as God had commanded Moses. They prepared the sardonyx stones to be placed in the settings. The stones were engraved as on a signet ring with the names of Israel's sons. He placed them on the ephod's shoulder pieces as remembrance stones for Israel's sons. It was done as God had commanded Moses. He made the breastplate out of brocaded work just like the ephod. It was also made from gold thread, sky blue, dark red, and crimson wool and twined linen. The breastplate was made to be a square when folded over. It was a span long and when folded over a span wide. The breastplate was set with 4 rows of precious stones. The first row, carnelian, emerald, topaz. The second row, carbuncle, sapphire, beryl. The third row, jacinth, agate, amethyst. The fourth row, chrysolite, onyx, jasper. The stones contain the name of Israel's sons. They were 12 names engraved as on a signet ring, one for each of the 12 tribes. Matched pure gold cables braided like cords were attached to the breastplate. They made 2 gold settings and 2 gold rings, and they placed the 2 rings on the breastplate's 2 upper corners. The 2 gold braids were then attached to the 2 rings on the breastplate's corners. The 2 braids on the 2 corners were attached to the 2 settings, and they were thus attached to the ephod shoulder pieces toward the front. They made 2 gold rings and placed them on the breastplate's 2 lower corners, on the edge toward the inside of the ephod. They made 2 gold rings and placed them on the bottoms of the ephod's 2 shoulder pieces toward the front, near where they were attached, above the ephod's belt. They laced the breastplate by its rings to the rings of the ephod with a twist of sky blue wool so that the breastplate would remain above the ephod's belt. The breastplate would thus not be displaced from the ephod. All this was done as God had commanded Moses. He made the robe for the ephod, weaving it completely out of sky blue wool. The robe's opening was in the middle, like the opening of a coat of mail, with a border all round so that it not be left open. On the skirt of the robe they made pomegranates out of a twined sky blue, dark red and crimson wool. They made pure gold belts and placed the bells between the pomegranates. The bells were thus all round on the bottom of the robe between the pomegranates. There was a bell and a pomegranate all round the bottom of the robe. It was thus made for the divine service, as God had commanded Moses. They made the tunics for Aaron and his sons by weaving them out of fine linen. They made the linen turban, the fine linen hats, and the linen pants all out of twined linen. They made the belt embroidered out of twined linen and sky blue, dark red and crimson wool. It was all done as God had commanded Moses. They made the head plate as a sacred coronet out of pure gold, written on it in the same manner as a signet ring's engraving, with the words "Holy to God." They placed a twist of sky blue wool on the head plate so that it could be placed over the turban. It was all done as God had commanded Moses. All the work on the communion tent tabernacle was thus completed. The Israelites did exactly as God had commanded Moses. They brought the tabernacle to Moses. There was the communion tent along with its equipment, its fastenings, beams, crossbars, pillars and bases. The roof of reddened ram's hides, the roof of blue processed hides, the cloth partition, the ark of testimony and its carrying poles, the ark cover, the table and its equipment, the showbread, the pure gold menorah along with its prescribed lamps, all its utensils, and the illuminating oil, the golden altar, the anointing oil, the perfumed incense, the communion tent's drape, the copper altar along with its carrying poles and all its equipment, the washstand and its base, the hangings for the enclosure, its poles and bases, the drape for the enclosure's entrance, its tying ropes and stakes, all the equipment used in the communion tent tabernacle's service, the packing clothes for sacred use, the sacred vestments for Aaron the priest, and the vestments that his sons would wear to serve. The Israelites had done all the work exactly in the manner that God had commanded Moses. When Moses saw that all the work had been done exactly as God had ordered, he blessed all the workers. God spoke to Moses, saying, "On the first day of the first month you shall erect the communion tent tabernacle. Place the ark of testimony there and shield the ark with the cloth partition. Bring in the table and set it up, and bring in the menorah and light its lamps. Place the gold incense altar directly in front of the ark of testimony, and then set up the drape at the tabernacle's entrance. Place the sacrificial altar in front of the entrance of the communion tent tabernacle. Then place the washstand between the communion tent and the altar, and fill it with water. Set up the enclosure all around and place the drape over the enclosure's entrance. Take the anointing oil and anoint the tabernacle and everything in it. You will thus sanctify it and all its equipment, making it holy. Anoint the sacrificial altar and all its equipment. You will thus sanctify the altar and it will be holy of holies. Anoint the wash stand and its basin and make them holy. Bring Aaron and his sons to the communion tent's entrance and have them immersed in a mikvah. Then have Aaron put on the sacred vestments and anoint him, thus sanctifying him as a priest to me. Bring forth Aaron's sons and place the tunics on them. Then anoint them just as you anointed the father, so that they will be priests to me. It will be done so that the anointing will make them an eternal hereditary priesthood for all generations. Moses proceeded to do exactly as God had commanded him. In the first month of the second year of the Exodus, on the first of the month, the tabernacle was erected. Moses erected the tabernacle. He did this by setting up the bases, placing the beams in them, and fastening them together. With the crossbars, he then set up the pillars. He spread the tent over the tabernacle and placed the tent's roof over it. It was all done as God had commanded Moses. He took the tablets of testimony and placed them in the ark. He then placed the carrying poles in the ark and set the cover on top of the ark. He brought the ark into the tabernacle and set up the cloth partition so that it would shield the ark of testimony. It was all done as God had commanded Moses. He placed the table in the communion tent outside the cloth partition on the north side of the tabernacle. Then he placed the prescribed arrangement of bread on it before God. It was all done as God had commanded Moses. He placed the menorah in the communion tent directly across from the table, on the southern side of the tabernacle. He then lit the lamps before God. It was all done as God had commanded Moses. He placed the golden altar in the communion tent in front of the cloth partition. Then he burnt perfume incense on it. It was all done as God had commanded Moses. He placed the drape over the tabernacle's entrance. He then placed the sacrificial altar in front of the entrance of the communion tent tabernacle, and he sacrificed the burnt offering and meal offering on it. It was all done as God had commanded Moses. He set the wash stand between the communion tent and the altar, and he filled it with water for washing. Moses, Aaron, and Aaron's sons washed their hands and feet from it. They would wash in this manner whenever they came to the communion tent or offered sacrifice on the altar. It was all done as God had commanded Moses. He set up the enclosure surrounding the tabernacle and altar, and he placed the drape over the enclosure's entrance. With this, Moses completed all the work. The cloud covered the communion tent, and God's glory filled the tabernacle. Moses could not come into the communion tent, since the cloud had rested on it, and God's glory filled the tabernacle. Later, when the cloud would rise up from the tabernacle, it would be a signal for the Israelites to move on, and this was true in all their travels. Whenever the cloud did not rise, they would not move on, waiting until the day it did. God's cloud would then remain on the tabernacle by day, and fire was in it by night. This was visible to the entire family of Israel in all their travels.